Chapter 846. If the dragon breath of an ancestral monster realm dragon was not handled properly, it could instantly destroy an entire city. Lin Yuan's soul almost left his body when he was shrouded by the dragon's breath. Almost without thinking, he circulated all the demonic energy in his body and mobilized the water around him to rush toward the dragon's breath. However, when the two forces collided, the water flow Lin Yuan controlled was instantly dispersed, and the demonic energy contained in it was also instantly evaporated by the dragon's breath. With the gap of two great realms, the demonic energy of the two sides could not be compared in terms of quality or quantity. Coupled with the fact that Lin Yuan had previously exchanged blows with the demonic beast with the bloodline of Wu Jiqi and hired a hired thug to show off his muscles, although Lin Yuan's Joss flame power had not been depleted, he really could not use any decent means. If he were to rely on his own strength to deal with this dragon youth, he would probably die on the spot in less than 3 moves. However, the timing of the appearance of the aberrant ancestral dragon was too ingenious, directly attracting and restraining most of the ancestral monster realm experts. The remaining ones were not qualified to intervene in a battle of this level and could only cooperate with the various monster kings to eliminate the aberrant ancestral dragon. Even if they wanted to help, they were really no match for the dragon youth. Moreover, there was a deeper scheme involved. Who knew whether the dragon youth's killing of Black Jiao was ordered by the Dragon Temple? Even if it was not ordered by the Dragon Temple, so what? This dragon tribe youth didn't care about the bigger picture. Attacking the Black Flood dragon at a time like this would incur the wrath of the masses. It didn't matter if he succeeded or not. If he succeeded, the sea monster clans would denounce him, and the dragon tribe of the 4 seas would have to pay a huge price to appease the masses. Furthermore, the dragon tribe of the 4 seas would lose a descendant with limitless potential like the Black Flood dragon. It was a win-win situation for them. But what if he failed? The Black Jiao would also be standing on the opposite side of the 4 seas dragon clan. If he invited 1 or 2 more helpers to deal with the 4 seas dragon clan in a fit of anger, even without the hidden danger of the great old ruler, the 4 seas dragon clan could forget about continuing to be the overlord of the endless sea. The deep-rooted bad habits of living creatures were vividly displayed at this moment. Indeed, Lin Yuan was a very important means to break the stalemate, but the 4 seas dragon clan had single-handedly resisted the aberrant for so long. If they did not have a few things that could suppress the aberrant, they would have been unable to contain the fire long ago and would not wait for Black Jiao to reveal the aberrant matter. If other ancestral monster ancestors made a move, they would certainly go forward to stop them. However, they were happy to see the dragon race of the 4 seas take action. After all, the dragon race of the 4 seas would be the first to suffer. Beast. An ancestral dragon ancestor dragon clans, dragon clans, and Dragon Clan, the place where Lin Yuan and the old ruler had a battle of ideas was actually not far away. It was just a little bit out of the control range of the Willow Stone Fortress. With the strength of the ancestor demon realm, he could quickly arrive there. However, one of the parties involved was also in the ancestor demon realm. When it arrived, the Dragon Clan youth would have to make at least 3 to 5 moves. If Lin Yuan couldn't withstand it, he would end up dead on the spot. Black Jiao. I told you to stop right there. The Dragon Clan's youth's face was gloomy, as if he did not expect Lin Yuan to not even dare to fight and only run away. The anger in his heart burned even more. He felt that Lin Yuan was looking down on him and was unwilling to fight with him. Before the first dragon breath was completely resolved by Lin Yuan, it opened its mouth again and spat out 3 dragon breaths in a row. After these 3 dragon breaths, the demonic power on its body was weakened, and its demonic power, which was as majestic as the sea, was almost consumed by 2/3 at this moment, without any leeway left. This was no longer a simple attempt to kill Lin Yuan. Under the devastation of these 4 dragon breaths, Lin Yuan would not even have a corpse left if he was not careful. As Lin Yuan swam rapidly, he saw an ancestral dragon rushing towards him with a face full of shock and anger. He did not sense the existence of any threat, so he understood that this ancestral dragon did not want him to die here, so he specially came to rescue him. As long as he could hold on until this ancestral dragon rushed to his side, the rest would be easy. With a chance of survival, the despair in Lin Yuan's heart faded a little, and he continued to swim with Taimu. It was not that he had to drag Taimu with him, but at present, the brave crab clan was a good helper. He could not just leave Taimu to fend for himself and only care about escaping. In addition, if things really got out of hand, he could directly throw Taimu out to block the opponent's attacks. At least he could buy a few more breaths of time to ensure his safety. But now that he thought about it, the actions of this Dragon Clan youth were strange. He was clearly rational, otherwise he would not have endured for so long without making a move. Moreover, after making a move, he kept asking Lin Yuan to come to his side so that he could protect Lin Yuan and dispel the vigilance of those ancestral demons who did not have time to investigate the situation here. Even when he made a move, he went all out every time, clearly not intending to give Lin Yuan any chance to make a comeback. However, it was impossible for a rational existence not to see the importance of the ideological conflict between him and the old ruler in this war. Then, why did he have to kill him, and why did he have to do it at this time? Was there any benefit to him? No. Was there any benefit to the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas? There was none. If he killed Lin Yuan at this time, the final beneficiary would definitely be the old ruler's side. However, when he was engaged in the ideological conflict earlier, some of the aberrations hidden among the guards could not hold back and removed their disguises to try to kill Lin Yuan. At that time, Lin Yuan was also observing each of the demonic beasts through the eye of God. At that time, this Dragon Clan youth did not show any discomfort at all. This was unreasonable. As long as he was influenced by the old ruler, no matter how shrewd he was, it was useless. Under this kind of ideological conflict, it was impossible to hold back. Therefore, this Dragon Clan youth was most likely not an aberration. But the question was that really the case? If that was the case, the timing of the appearance of the aberration ancestral dragon was too coincidental. As soon as it appeared, it stalled most of the experts on his side. At that time, the Dragon Clan youth did not look surprised at all, as if he had already known this would happen. At that time, he had been staring at Lin Yuan. Although he was moving forward, he was not moving closer to the aberration ancestral dragon, but toward himself. What kind of problem had occurred in between? What was the relationship between the old ruler and this Dragon Clan youth? If he did not figure this out, Lin Yuan felt that he could fall into a dead end at any time. Chapter 847. The Great Old Ones were not scary, because Lin Yuan only needed to have a battle of ideals to test who was abnormal and who was normal. However, the Dragon Race youth was obviously colluding with the Great Old Ones, but he could not even test out the battle of ideals. He was like a sharp blade hanging above Lin Yuan's head. If he could not see through this method, any demonic beast around him in the future could become a knife for the Great Old Ones to kill him. This time, he was prepared, but he still ended up in this situation. What if he was not prepared next time? With a belly full of worries, Lin Yuan clenched his teeth and crazily swung his flood dragon body, throwing out undercurrents at the bottom of the sea. However, they could not even stop the 4 dragon breaths. Bang! 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 3 muffled sounds were heard. Lin Yuan only saw 3 pure white scales flying over his head. For some reason, when Lin Yuan looked at the 3 scales, countless emotions suddenly appeared in his heart. There was intimacy, reverence, and even a trace of fear hidden in his blood. These are dragon scales? And they are scales from a true dragon. As everyone knew, dragons were born to be extremely powerful, but every creature had a weakness. For example, the reverse scale of a dragon was not the reverse scale that people in his previous life would say, "Touch the reverse scale of a dragon and you'll die." Instead, it was the only weak spot on a real dragon's body. A young dragon was not considered powerful. In the great wasteland world, there were even some powerful demonic beasts that specialized in hunting young dragons. However, when a true dragon grew up, its scales would be hard to injure. The swords and sabers here were not weapons in the hands of mortals. In the era when true dragons roamed, no matter if it was a transformed demon or an ancient human, they did not use ordinary items. They were either innate spiritual treasures or acquired spiritual treasures. However, even if these powerful treasures were equipped, they might not be able to hurt a true dragon. Looking at Lin Yuan's flood dragon scales, it was clear. Even a flood dragon had such a terrifying defense, let alone a true dragon whose bloodline was much higher than a flood dragon's. However, there was a reverse scale below the neck of a true dragon, which was the only vital point of a true dragon. It was even weaker than a mortal's flesh and blood. That was why there was a saying in his previous life, touch the reverse scale of a dragon and you will die. This wasn't an act of pretentiousness, but rather a warning. It was also an instinctive defense of one's vitals. When you touched a true dragon's reverse scale, no matter what you were thinking, you could easily kill the true dragon. Unless the true dragon was willing to let you touch its reverse scale, it would be an irreconcilable grudge. Of course, even at the level of a true dragon, some biological habits were still very difficult to change. For example, the pain of molting was something that they had to go through every time they grew up. If they didn't have the strength to break through the shackles of their old skin and scales, they would be suffocated to death. Therefore, the older a dragon was, the stronger it was. Whether it was their strength or their scales, they were constantly growing, and the probability of death was also greatly increased. Coupled with the powerful bloodline of the dragons, their reproductive ability was also lower. That was why the population of this race was dwindling and even completely faded from the world stage. However, even if they molted, the reverse scale wouldn't be shed. There was only one possibility for the reverse scale to fall off, and that was the molting of a true dragon. The true dragon was a race that was full of treasures. Even the reverse scale, after leaving the body, could become an extremely hard magic treasure through special refining methods. It was even harder than ordinary dragon scales. However, this thing was basically left behind by the deceased dragons for their descendants. If a grand cultivator killed a dragon, he would definitely not be able to obtain the reverse scale. This was because if it wasn't voluntary, as the life source of the dragon dissipated, this reverse scale would also collapse on its own. This was all from the memories of the true dragon bloodline. The 3 white reverse scales represented the 3 true dragons that had fallen in this world. As expected of a large race that had escaped from the untainted world. Even if they had fallen to the point where they had to fight for food with the demonic beasts of this world, their foundation was still not to be underestimated. Several balls of dragon breath collided with the 3 reverse scale magic treasures one after another, but the impact was not even as great as the ancestral dragon's magic treasure. It was like a drop of rain falling into a bonfire, instantly evaporating into nothingness. What an evil creature, you actually dared to deceive us. The ancestral dragon's figure swept past Lin Yuan. His eyes were wide open, and the color of his pupils turned from black to gold, just like the eyes of a true dragon. Golden dragon eyes were the standard of a true dragon, but the standard also meant that it was the weakest type. For example, a true dragon that was good at controlling water would usually have blue eyes. A true dragon that was good at condensing ice would have white eyes. A true dragon that was good at poison would have dark green eyes, and a true dragon that was good at controlling wood would have dark green eyes. Only those that didn't have any special abilities would have golden eyes, just like the scales turning into gold. Ordinary people would only praise Lin Yuan's unusual pupils as beautiful. However, in the true dragon race, he was definitely a gifted genius. Because this meant that Lin Yuan was good at controlling water and condensing ice. If he could purify his bloodline to the level of a true dragon in the future, he could even start to study the Tao of water and Tao of ice. By then, his battle prowess would be more than 10 times stronger than those of the same level. Among the true dragons, if one's pupils and scales were golden, then they were considered to be of average talent. Therefore, although this ancestral dragon was a true dragon that was still roaming the world, he would usually use illusions to change the color of his pupils to black. After all, golden eyes were nothing short of a disgrace to a true dragon. But now, he was enraged to the extreme. Naturally, he couldn't care less about concealing his true strength. Naturally, the color of his pupils was revealed. Seeing an ancestral dragon blocking his path, a trace of embarrassment flashed across the ancestral dragon's face. He shouted, "Old thing, you all value this black jiao so much, but why don't you think about it? When has this Black Jiao ever thought of himself as a member of the true dragon race? Previously, old ancestor Ao Xian even made an exception and invited him to stay in the Dragon God Temple as the seventh dragon god, but in the end, the Black Jiao rejected him without even thinking about it. What benefits do you all have for our true dragon race if you protect such a trash? Speaking until here, greed flashed across his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "If you all don't want to be the bad guy, then I will be. Wait until I capture this Black Jiao, peel off his skin and break his bones, extract his divine soul, and soak him in dragon's breath day and night. I don't have to worry that he won't hand over his opportunities and secret techniques. At that time, our true dragon race will definitely rise to another level. Not to mention continuing to dominate the endless sea, it won't be a problem to unify the entire Sky Martial continent." Lunatic. Lin Yuan couldn't help but think of this evaluation in his heart. The true dragon race of the four seas had dominated the endless sea for so many years. Wasn't the younger generation of the true dragon race being protected too well? This guy was already in the ancestral demon realm, how could he still speak and act so childishly? Extracting his soul and torturing it so that he could obtain the opportunities and secret techniques he possessed? Chapter 848. Were the opportunities and secret techniques on his body good? The answer was yes. After all, they were all good things produced by the system. Even the martial skills and cultivation techniques that he used Guan Zhaoshan's body to cultivate were all top-quality goods that other hosts had plundered from various worlds. Although the Joss flame power was not little, in the system's eyes, to be able to be called second-rate was not an ordinary thing. Most of the cultivation techniques in the Tianwu world were seen by the system. In exchange, it was probably a sneer. It was too lazy to even evaluate them as second-rate. Was there anyone who coveted such good things? There were many who coveted them. Ever since Lin Yuan stood out, regardless of whether it was his unrivaled methods or his cultivation speed that put countless people to shame, he had undoubtedly attracted the attention of countless greedy eyes. However, by chance, Lin Yuan had wrapped himself in the tiger skin of the demon court. Coincidentally, in the ancient times of this world, there was indeed a group of experts from the great desolate world who had formed the demon court. They had left an extremely strong impression on the natives of the Tianwu world. Even though the demon court had been destroyed for countless years, as long as they discovered something related to the demon court, countless almighty people had no choice but to pay attention to it. Most of the troubles that Lin Yuan encountered were actually set up by those almighty people behind the scenes. They wanted to test Lin Yuan's limits and at the same time, force out the trump cards in Lin Yuan's hands one by one. When Lin Yuan was at his wit's end, they would bare their fangs and devour Lin Yuan, who could be called a sumptuous feast. Now that his cultivation was getting higher and higher, there were more and more experts eyeing him. The tiger skin of the demon court was getting thinner and thinner. There were even some existences that the demon court could not suppress who were itching to make a move on Lin Yuan. For example, the people behind Spiritual Master He. After knowing Lin Yuan's goal, they were still unwilling to take away the disciples under Spiritual Master He. Weren't they supporting Spiritual Master He? They wanted to use this evil cultivator's mysterious and unfathomable methods to test Lin Yuan's worth. Therefore, Lin Yuan gave them face, and slapped their faces. He even threatened to kick them out of the game. Although this move was arrogant, it had to be done. Those people were eyeing Lin Yuan covetously for two reasons. First, for his secret. Second, after reaching a certain level, cultivation resources needed to keep up. Even if it was just a Dao initiation realm cultivator, the amount of resources needed for one day's cultivation could bankrupt a third-rate sect. Lin Yuan could have given up on these resources in the past, but not now. He had enough strength, and there was no need for him to support those vermin that he might not even be able to defeat. Although he had the system and could steadily improve without these resources, he still had a large group of people under him. If he didn't think of ways to accumulate resources now, when their strength increased, they would all go hungry. However, Lin Yuan's move was indeed a little too overbearing. Although the Heavenly Gate Guardians with higher cultivation levels couldn't make a move, they couldn't help but secretly think. Now that Lin Yuan had kicked out a Dao initiation realm cultivator, when he broke through, would he kick out a supreme realm cultivator? If he took another step forward, wouldn't it be the other way around? Wouldn't he reach out and ask for things from them? Ever since the fisherman's son could accurately find him in the endless sea despite knowing nothing about him, Lin Yuan knew that there were probably countless powerful people secretly spying on him. Therefore, when he received the power of 3 million incense sticks, he did not hesitate at all and directly hired a powerful helper to slaughter the endless sea monsters who did not know what was good for them. Firstly, it was to lay the foundation for his next plan. Secondly, it was to intimidate the guardians of the Heaven Gate. Lin Yuan knew that the weight of the demon court was no longer enough to intimidate these greedy people, so he decisively told them that he didn't have the support of the demon court behind him. However, the helper he pulled in clearly proved that his backing was even greater than the demon court. Of course, the gap between the realms was there. Lin Yuan didn't know how many famous Heavenly Gate guardians the man in the white coat killed in the void, and how many big shots who were lucky enough to survive were scared witless. Most of them even felt that they didn't have to be enemies with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan only wanted to express that he would accept as many methods as possible within the rules. However, he could flip the table at any time to bully others. If they didn't want him to have an easy time, then no one would have an easy time. After showing off his muscles, although he didn't dare to say that his path would be unobstructed, but for a long time, no one would dare to use such methods to bully others. If they wanted his things, they would have to sit down and gamble. The winner would take all, or the loser would have nothing. Those who should be thinking about Lin Yuan would definitely continue to think about Lin Yuan. It was just that they didn't dare to break the rules in a short period of time, in case Lin Yuan went on a killing spree again. As for when they walked out of the psychological shadow brought by the man in the white coat, it was hard to say if they would still be a match for Lin Yuan. But what if Lin Yuan's opportunity fell into the hands of the natives of the Sky Martial world? Then it would be a big joke. Although these natives came and went, and probably hid many trump cards in private, the real gap between them was not big. If they fought with their lives on the line, they would still be able to fight to the death with other forces of the same level. Although the dragon clan of the Four Seas was strong, but if they obtained Lin Yuan's opportunity, it would definitely attract the attention of other forces. Wasn't this dragon clan youth afraid that this sweet potato would be scalded? Even if the dragon clan of the Four Seas acted high and mighty in the beginning, they only dared to ask for Lin Yuan's method to purify his blood vessels. At the same time, they coveted Lin Yuan's territory and foundation in the Sky Martial continent. No one dared to ask Lin Yuan to hand over all his secrets. They only dared to eat the things that the dragon clan of the Four Seas could eat. You want everything? Then you have to die. Bastard. Shut up. Zhu Long, who had protected Lin Yuan, was so angry that his expression became distorted. He stared fiercely at the dragon clan youth, wishing that he could tear this thing to pieces to vent his anger. Did he really think that the walls had no ears? Just based on these words, Zhu Long felt that a blood-red danger word had appeared above his head. If it really came to that point, Lin Yuan would definitely want to exterminate the dragon clan of the Four Seas. Today, he might really be able to dig out a part of his secrets. Then, what awaited the dragon clan of the Four Seas would be the encirclement and annihilation of the various forces. The entire clan would be buried with Lin Yuan because of this guy's greed. Blackwater Dragon King, you must be joking. Zhu Long bowed to Lin Yuan and said in a deep voice, "My dragon clan of the Four Seas has not taught properly. I hope that sire will not bicker with a junior. Leave this matter to my divine dragon palace, I will definitely give sire a satisfactory answer." Speaking up to here, it changed the topic and said in a sad tone, "Our 4C dragon clan has a bad reputation in the Endless Sea. Many demonic beasts say that our dragon clan only values bloodline. Those with noble bloodline can do whatever they want, and those with inferior bloodline can only be slaves. This kind of atmosphere is brought up by you guys who have rotten roots, right? Bloodline? If bloodline could explain everything, how could this world belong to the human race? As the ancestral Gragon's words fell, even Lin Yuan couldn't help but be slightly moved. The reason why humans could become the protagonists of heaven and earth was not that they were favored by heaven and earth. It was because they struggled in a harsh environment and constantly worked hard for a better future. They tried to become stronger again and again until they defeated all the different species and became the supreme ruler. Not many people could see through this, and even fewer people were willing to admit it. Those different species who were defeated by humans always liked to attribute all of this to the fact that humans were favored by fate and were the protagonists of heaven and earth. The powerful different species were just whetstones that humans used to sharpen themselves. They resented the unfairness of heaven and earth, but were unwilling to admit that humans had paid a lot of blood and effort in those dark years in exchange for everything that they had today. It had to be said that this kind of guy who only talked about bloodline was really disgusting. A powerful bloodline was indeed enviable, but he couldn't say that his bloodline wasn't noble enough because he couldn't make any progress. Wasn't this a case of cerebral palsy? What kind of bloodline could humans have? Why were there always strong human beings? At this moment, the expression on Lin Yuan's face relaxed slightly. When his gaze fell on the Dragon Clan youth, there was already a hint of killing intent. Connecting it to his previous conjecture and the ancestral Gragon's words, Lin Yuan finally understood why the Dragon Clan youth had pursued him so relentlessly and insisted on killing him at this time even though he hadn't been transformed into an aberrant. Moreover, the Great Old One was still doing his best to cooperate with him and create opportunities for him. This guy was indeed bewitched. But he hadn't been transformed into an aberrant. From the ancestral Gragon's previous words, it could be inferred that the Dragon Clan youth was very jealous of him. Other than Lin Yuan, who knew that he was a cheater, the other cultivators and monsters all felt that Lin Yuan could grow so quickly because he had a great opportunity. Before Lin Yuan appeared, the Dragon Clan youth was the #1 genius of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. After Lin Yuan appeared, the title of #1 genius naturally fell to Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan wasn't from the Four Seas Dragon Clan, who asked him to have the bloodline of the Dragon Clan? Under this sense of disparity, it was normal for the Dragon Clan youth to be dissatisfied with him. In addition, he was a bloodline believer. He believed that Lin Yuan's bloodline was inferior to his, so his aptitude was naturally inferior to his. The reason why he could be where he was today was all because of the opportunity that Lin Yuan had. Thus, malice was born. The strange existence on the side of the Great Old One's side undoubtedly grasped this point and bewitched him, provoking his inner demon. After provoking the Dragon Clan youth's killing intent and greed, the Great Old One didn't aberrate him, but quietly withdrew. That was why when Lin Yuan was having a battle of ideals, the Dragon Clan youth didn't show the slightest discomfort. The methods of these Great Old Ones were indeed strange and vicious. If it wasn't for the unseen sense of danger reminding him, he might have really fallen for it. Who would have thought that the Great Old One's killing move against him wasn't the aberrant ancestral Gragon from the start, but a Dragon Clan member who was plagued by inner demons? After understanding the key point, Lin Yuan's expression became better. Although he was more and more vigilant about the strange methods of the Great Old One, in a sense, as long as he maintained enough vigilance and stayed away from these guys who might give birth to inner demons, at least he wouldn't fall into the situation where he was crazily being chased by the Dragon Clan youth like today. If it wasn't for him revealing his trump card that could flip the table, and expressing that if the Endless Seas demon beasts weren't willing to help, he would directly leave, and didn't really fight with the Dragon Clan youth. Instead, he realized that there was something wrong with the Dragon Clan youth and fled in the direction of the Willowstone Fortress before the other party made a move. Most likely, someone had already seen through his weakness and might want to make a move on him soon. Chapter 850. Old thing, don't talk nonsense. If you want to fight, just do it. You always say that you can't do this or that. If you make a mistake, you're directly thrown into the evil dragon pool and imprisoned. Some people are even imprisoned for life. You treat your people so coldly and ruthlessly, but you still say that it's for the good of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. Bullshit. I say, you're all bullshit. If the dragon tribe of the Four Seas wants to become stronger, we have to plunder resources and opportunities. Only when we're really strong, we don't have to care about the guardians of the heavenly gates. Can't you understand this? If we follow your train of thought, it won't take long for the endless sea to become like the Hengduan mountain range. We'll become animals reared by the guardians of the heavenly gates. When that time comes, they can kill and slaughter us as they wish. What can you do? It's useless for you to rope in the black jiao. You can't get the things on the black jiao. At this time, what you should do is to rob and interrogate. As long as we can get the black jiao's opportunity, the dragon tribe of the four seas will be the most powerful existence in the world in less than 100 years. Don't you know how to cherish such a good opportunity in front of you? Ha 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 ha. No, it's not that you don't know how to cherish it. It's not that you don't know how to do it. You just want to keep your hypocritical face. Since that's the case, I'll be the bad guy. I'll take the black jiao's opportunity. Why do you make it seem like I'm betraying the dragon tribe of the four seas? The dragon tribe youth's face was full of arrogance. His skin and flesh quickly broke open, revealing a huge body that was not inferior to the ancestral dragons. The two huge creatures directly faced each other in the air. At the same time, he roared angrily, "You're the ones who are wrong. Not me." The ancestral dragon was silent. He kept opening his mouth, but it was as if someone was strangling his throat. He could not say a word and could only look at the dragon tribe youth in silence. The dragon tribe of the four seas was indeed very powerful. In addition to their low reproduction rate, every demonic beast with the dragon tribe's bloodline was protected like a plant in a greenhouse. They only knew how to absorb nutrients in a comfortable environment, but once in the outside world, they would probably die very quickly. Yes, that's right, Lin Yuan does have a great opportunity on him, but who can guarantee that Lin Yuan will hand it over? Even if Lin Yuan handed over a part of it, who could guarantee that it was complete and could be completed quickly? Unless Lin Yuan was willing to impart all of this to the dragon tribe of the four seas, all of this would bring about the destruction of the entire tribe. After obtaining Lin Yuan's fortuitous encounter, would the dragon race of the four seas need 100 years to grow before they could become the most powerful race in the world? Not necessarily. This period of time could be longer, or it could be shorter. However, what was certain was that no matter if it was the other demonic beasts in the endless sea or the human practitioners among the guardians of the heaven's gate, no one would give them the time and opportunity to grow. If the dragon clan of the four seas did not hand over the things they had obtained, their clan would be exterminated overnight. However, if they had handed over these things, then why did they have to interrogate Lin Yuan in the first place? If they befriended Lin Yuan at this time and waited for Lin Yuan to grow and show some goodwill to the dragon race of the four seas, it would be a great opportunity for the entire dragon race of the four seas. Lin Yuan and the dragon race of the four seas did have some conflicts, but at the end of the day, Lin Yuan was still a demonic beast. Once he reached the true peak, he would definitely have to deal with the true experts among the human practitioners. At that time, if both sides did not get along well, a great war would break out. Among the demonic beasts, the only ones qualified to participate in this war would be the dragon race of the four seas. If Lin Yuan wanted to support the forces under his command, could he expect the northern frontier to slowly grow? Lin Yuan was not that foolish, and neither was the dragon race of the four seas. Only this fool in front of him stubbornly believed in his own theory. Sigh. The ancestral dragon sighed softly and said with pity, "You have fallen to this state today because us seniors have spoiled you too much. Today, I will personally end you to prevent you from making more mistakes and bringing disaster to the entire dragon race of the four seas. Let's fight." Lin Yuan had originally thought that the following battle would be a scene of various techniques and magic treasures flying around, but in reality, the two enormous dragons were like the most primitive of beasts. Their bodies were entwined together, their dragon heads constantly moving as they tore at each other's flesh. Even their dragon claws were clawing and slapping as they constantly attacked each other. There was nothing fancy about the battle between the two ancestral dragon dragons. Every time they attacked, a spray of golden blood mixed with minced flesh would erupt. As a spectator, Lin Yuan had 3 reverse scales to protect him, so he was not afraid of being torn apart by the shockwaves of the battle. However, as he watched, the light in Lin Yuan's eyes gradually dimmed as he fell into a mysterious state. What was the Great Tao? The Great Tao was the simplest. The humans and monsters that Lin Yuan had seen before all liked to use some fancy techniques to fight, but now, these two creatures that could be said to be the strongest among all the creatures that Lin Yuan had seen before, with the exception of the white-robed man, were still using their claws and teeth to tear at each other. It was filled with a primitive feeling, but upon closer inspection, he felt that their movements seemed to contain countless truths, making it difficult for him to extricate himself from them. The skills that the system had given Lin Yuan were actually of this style. Apart from the origin powers of water and ice, most of the techniques allowed Lin Yuan to borrow the strength of his body to fight. Lin Yuan had more than once believed that these were merely crude and superficial techniques, and that true cultivators and monsters should be able to summon the wind and summon the rain, using various techniques to fight. But in reality, was this really the case? As mentioned before, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth would suddenly be produced on its own, but it was extremely limited. Every cultivator or monster that swallowed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate would greatly consume the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once a cultivator died, the spiritual energy would not return to heaven and earth, but would dissipate along with it. Therefore, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth became less and less, the inheritances of cultivators were cut off, the monsters continued to degenerate, and rare treasures no longer appeared. This became a period of Dharma decline recorded in the history of cultivation. Perhaps there were other reasons, but Lin Yuan's previous life was truly a period of Dharma decline. Most of the cultivators were liars. Even if there were true cultivators, they could only cultivate to the level of ancient cultivators. There was no solution to this situation. Only during the period of Dharma decline, when the spiritual energy produced by heaven and earth was restored to a certain extent, would monsters and cultivators naturally be born and enter the next cultivation era's reincarnation. Those powerful people would either leave a world of Dharma decline, or turn into dust during this period of Dharma decline. At this time, no matter if it was a human or a beast, the method of self-protection was to fight with their bodies. This was the inheritance engraved in their blood. How could a self-preservation method engraved in his bloodline be weak? Chapter 851. The two mighty figures of the dragon clan clashed and tore at each other, while Lin Yuan, under the protection of the three reverse scales of the true dragon, entered a mysterious state. Tai Yang, who was following beside Lin Yuan, saw that Lin Yuan's eyes were absent-minded. He subconsciously opened his mouth to shout, but soon noticed that Lin Yuan's eyes were still flashing with a bright light. He did not look like he was shocked, but more like he had an epiphany recorded in some ancient literature. The battle between the ancestral Dragon and the dragon clan youth lasted about 10 minutes. Both sides were really angry, and naturally did not consider holding back. In the end, the ancestral Dragon tore off the head of the dragon clan youth and declared victory. However, the ancestral Dragon was not in a good state either. When Lin Yuan came to, he saw that 3 of the ancestral Dragon's 4 dragon claws were broken, and his dragon whiskers were of different lengths. The upper half of his body had been bitten off by the dragon clan youth, while the lower half of his body had been forcefully crushed. His dragon head was also uneven, and one of his horns was broken. If Lin Yuan had suffered such terrible injuries, Lin Yuan would not have had the slightest chance of survival. However, for the ancestral Dragon, it was only a slight injury to his origin that could not be forcibly healed in a short period of time. He would need some time to recuperate. The heavily injured ancestral Dragon turned his head to look at Lin Yuan, but did not say a word. He just opened his mouth and inhaled, swallowing the 3 reverse scales into his stomach. Then, he turned into a golden rainbow and escaped into the Willow Stone Fortress, seemingly intending to go into seclusion to recuperate. At this point, there was really nothing much to say. It was not difficult for these great demons who had lived for countless years to figure out Lin Yuan's character. The Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas had already done everything they could. If Lin Yuan was willing to remember this kindness, he did not need to say anything else, and he would be rewarded in the future. If Lin Yuan was not willing to remember this kindness, then it would be useless no matter how much he said. Ding! Congratulations to the host for comprehending the Destiny Divine ability, Roving Dragon's 9 transformations, by observing the battle between two ancestral demon realm dragons. A system message slowly appeared. Previously, there was no notification because it was worried that it would disturb Lin Yuan's epiphany. Now that it had confirmed that Lin Yuan was completely awake, the system unhurriedly announced the harvest of Lin Yuan's epiphany. Name, Roaming Dragon 9 Transformations Category, Natural Magical Power Description. Observing the Dragon Tribe's experts fighting, the blood in your body is slightly agitated, awakening a special ability that belongs to you. This special ability can only be used by the host and cannot be passed on to other living beings. However, it will be engraved in your bloodline. The host's descendants have a certain probability of tracing their bloodline and naturally inheriting this special ability. The introduction given by the system was very simple, but after Lin Yuan practiced the Roving Dragon's 9 transformations in his mind, an undetectable hint of joy flashed across his eyes. This Destiny Divine ability was not simple. From the level of the cultivation method, if one did not want to walk on the path of the gods, as long as one had enough talent, cultivating this cultivation method could at least reach the celestial realm. Although one could not achieve immortality, one would still have a lifespan of close to 10,000 years, which was longer than the transcending realm and ancestral demon realm in the Tianwu world. One's combat strength would also be stronger. If one could survive the lightning tribulation, becoming an immortal with the same lifespan as the sun and moon would not be a problem. In a sense, the cultivation of this Destiny Divine ability was closer to the path of cultivation that Lin Yuan knew. However, those who could reach the highest level were usually those who walked on the path of the gods. The so-called immortal Tao was a scam from the beginning to the end. Since the ancient calamities, the path of cultivation had become purely about cultivating Qi to the Mahayana realm and then surviving the lightning tribulation to ascend. These immortals who had ascended could occupy a place in the so-called heavenly court and underworld, but everyone was well aware that the ones who had the final say in these places were actually those who walked on the path of the gods. Immortals were very strong. In many cases, they were even stronger than the gods. However, the most fatal thing was that immortals had their limits. After transcending the lightning tribulation to ascend, immortals had to continue to transcend the lightning tribulation if they wanted to increase their strength. Each tribulation was a qualitative leap, but if they were not careful, they would die under the lightning tribulation. To reach the level of the Tao ancestor, one had to transcend at least 12 tribulations. However, almost no one could transcend 12 tribulations. Even at that level, in front of an untainted land overlord like Hong Jun, they were still as weak as ants unless they could transcend the legendary 13th tribulation. However, no one in the entire untainted land had ever seen the 13th tribulation. Whether the 13th tribulation existed or not, no one in the entire untainted land had ever seen it. It was only regarded as a legend. At the end of the immortal Tao, one would only be at the level of Sanqing. They would never be a threat to Hong Jun. Therefore, this cultivation system, which had been castrated by God knows how many times, slowly spread. However, in comparison, the divine Tao was much more dangerous. A powerful God meant that they had to manage a powerful divine kingdom. They had to be able to suppress the tyrannical gods in their own divine systems. They also had to face challenges from other divine systems' god kings. They also had to manage their faith and ensure that their believers would not switch to the embrace of other gods. They also had to ensure that their believers would not perish. Everything required a lot of time and energy. The slightest carelessness could lead to the destruction of one's soul. Compared to the immortal Tao, which most of the time only required one to cultivate in silence, it was countless times more difficult. Although this set of life source magical abilities could only be inherited from the bloodline, the Roaming Dragon's 9 transformations was not a simple cultivation method. It included a series of methods to temper or use the corporeal body. For example, circulating one's qi and blood, fist techniques, lightness techniques, absorbing the essence of various spiritual objects to temper the corporeal body, and so on. As long as Lin Yuan could find some alchemy, artifact refining, array Tao, and so on, he could almost deduce a complete cultivation system. Lin Yuan, who originally suffered from not being able to pass on the scripture of all living beings, did not have to worry about not being able to explain it to the Red Dust Taoist, because the immortal Tao method was not inferior to the soul sculpting secret art. From a personal point of view, Lin Yuan could completely say that he had gained a lot from this trip. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. But the question was the scheme of the old rulers really so simple? It was not that Lin Yuan was overthinking it, but according to the system's introduction, the old rulers were the heroes and wise men of their time. They were existences that could break free from the river of time. There was no easy way to find a good person. The other party could provoke the heart's demons to block the detection function attached to the battle of ideas, which seemed to give the Dragon Clan youth a great chance to kill him. This was indeed a good point. But everything had to be calculated before victory. This was the basic quality of a wise man. Could it be that the old rulers did not calculate that the other powerhouses in the Willowstone Fortress would not sit idly by? As long as he had the means to hold on until reinforcements arrived, he would be able to obtain a chance of survival? If they did not calculate to this point, then it meant that the so-called wise men among them were nothing more than this. If they calculated, then what was the deeper meaning behind this move? What would they do next? Chapter 852. At the same time. In the area where the Great Old Ones were located, countless waves of mind-numbing spiritual energy intertwined. Even if one were to sink in just a little bit, one would be twisted into a deformed being. Such a terrifying twisting power naturally did not come from just one Great Old One. All the existences that had struggled out of the river of time were gathered in this small area, working together to resist the impact of Lin Yuan's new era ideology. A huge purple monster that looked like an eyeball laughed and mocked, "Ancient E, even your plan fails sometimes. That little black Jiao didn't die in your scheme. Regarding this matter, shouldn't you give us a proper explanation? For your plan, I spent so much effort to provoke that kid's inner demon. Qi Ming even sent out the dragon that we tamed with great difficulty to attract the firepower, but in the end, Kakik. The one called Ancient E was a creature that barely maintained a humanoid form. It was 1.8 meters tall and wore a gray robe. A jade pendant that emitted a green luster hung on its waist. However, its facial features were distorted, making it impossible to see its expression. Instead of hair growing on its head, it was a poisonous snake that kept twisting its body. Ancient E turned his head and glanced at the purple eyeball. He glared at it and said, "If you didn't act rashly, how could you push the black Jiao to the opposite side of us? If you didn't do that, when we distorted the entire Endless Sea and controlled countless sea monsters to attack the Tianwu continent, everything would be under our control. We wouldn't be like now, blocked by a group of sea monsters, unable to move an inch. We're in such a precarious situation. If you really want me to give you an explanation, why don't you give us an explanation first?" The purple eyeball cackled a few more times, but it didn't say anything. It looked away with a guilty conscience. "Besides, who told you that my plan failed?" Ancient E waved his sleeves and sat on his seat with a cold face. He sneered and said, "I don't know what that black Jiao is thinking. He purposely threw out a battle of ideals to provoke us. He wants to force us to march into the Endless Sea and fight to the death with the sea monsters. However, in the end, he's just a beast. How could he know that he's not the only one who wants to fight?" Ancient Yi's eyes flashed with a faint chill. Now that things had developed to this point, regardless of whether it was the sea monsters or the Great Old Ones, they were at a standstill. Whether it was strength or numbers, the sea monsters had the absolute upper hand. However, they were unable to eliminate the Great Old Ones. This was because the Great Old Ones had a more terrifying distorting power than the normal aberrations. They were the peak existences of the old era. Once their numbers reached a certain point, the quantitative change would cause a qualitative change. Even if Lin Yuan continued to suppress them with the battle of ideals, the actual effect would not be great. Even if the monsters of the Endless Sea could suppress the aberrations they had transformed into, as the battle progressed, these Great Old Ones, who were far more terrifying than the aberrations, could distort the vanguard troops of the Endless Sea into aberrations in the blink of an eye, which was equivalent to establishing an invincible position. However, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea had multiplied for so many years. How could they not have any trump cards? Whoever had the upper hand would definitely be at a disadvantage. Just like the aberration ancestral dragon from before, it was almost captured when the Great Old Ones appeared. In the end, it was only recently completely transformed into an aberration. Those tyrannical sea monsters could also resist the distorting power with their own willpower. Although the result would not change, with Lin Yuan as a variable, the longer they delayed, the easier it would be for accidents to happen. As you all know, we are indeed very strong. However, compared to the united demonic beasts of the Endless Sea, we are ridiculously weak. Once the Black Flood Dragon discovers our weakness, or completely suppresses us through a battle of ideologies, it will only be a matter of time before we are sealed back into the river of time. If it wasn't for that idiot Ji Sui, it wouldn't be so difficult for us to occupy the Endless Sea. However, things have already reached this stage. There is no point in continuing to complain and fight among ourselves. Ancient clenched his right fist and said in a deep voice, "Fortunately, we still have a chance of survival. Now that the Endless Sea has serious internal conflicts, we should take advantage of this time to design their high-end combat power one by one and reduce the number of opponents we have to face when the final battle breaks out. This is a big strategy. I need all of you to fully cooperate with me. If anyone doesn't cooperate, I don't mind personally tearing them apart." At the same time, Lin Yuan, who was under the Willow Stone Fortress, slowly raised his head and muttered, "So this is their plan. They are indeed the top existences of their generation. With such great courage, I might not dare to make such a bet." He had thought it through. The Great Old Ones seemed to have the upper hand in the war with the sea monsters of the Endless Sea, and it was only a matter of time before they devoured the Endless Sea. However, in reality, they were just pushing ducks onto a perch. They could have easily devoured the entire Endless Sea and would not even have caused the Heavenly Gate Guards to be on guard against them. Perhaps they could really destroy the current world and strangle the new era in its cradle. Originally, the aberrations had the upper hand in the war. Otherwise, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea would not have been forced to retreat. However, the Great Old Ones should not be able to advance any further in a short period of time. Otherwise, the sea monsters of the Endless Sea would not have been able to defend the Willow Stone Fortress. Especially now that there was a variable like him, the Great Old Ones were afraid. They already knew that it was Lin Yuan who had started the new era. Regardless of whether they admitted it or not, they definitely treated Lin Yuan as an opponent on the same level as them. Thus, they could not help but guess that Lin Yuan was discovering their weakness. In this situation, it was obviously impossible for them to continue developing in silence. In particular, the assassination that they had planned today did not succeed. It would be even more difficult for them to do it again. In a situation where they could not kill Lin Yuan, they could only choose to speed up their pace and find an opportunity to fight to determine the victor. Including the dragon race youth and the seriously injured ancestral Gragon, how many ancestral demon ancestors have died on the side of the Endless Sea? If the Great Old Ones continue to nibble away at this speed, when the final battle comes, will there still be anyone who can fight on the side of the Endless Sea? Lin Yuan's strange eyes trembled slightly, and a feeling of palpitations arose spontaneously. If he did not feel that something was wrong, he would not have thought of this and had the same thoughts as he watched the sea monsters fight among themselves. Chapter 853. The outcome of the battle at the front had also been revealed. The mutated ancestral dragon was indeed powerful. It was originally standing at the peak of the ancestral demon realm. After the mutation, its physical strength became even more powerful. However, a tiger couldn't defeat a pack of wolves and was still torn into pieces by the ancestral demon of the Endless Sea. On the side of the Endless Sea, 3 ancestral demon realm monsters paid the price. Senior. Lin Yuan's figure flashed and stopped a relatively powerful ancestral demon. He said in a deep voice, "I've figured out something. I need to gather all the ancestral demon realm seniors for a meeting. Please help me inform the seniors." As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yuan's dragon tail rolled and handed a black cloth bag to the other party. The black cloth bag was a product of the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works. It was similar to a Sumra ring, but the storage space was not that large. It was only about 10 cubic meters. This was the product of the Northern Frontier's Ministry of Works' countless master-level craftsmen, the precious materials produced by the Hengduan Mountains and the Seven Dynasties, and the wonderful ideas in Lin Yuan's mind. Although it was far from Lin Yuan's initial idea, this black cloth bag was still an extremely rare treasure. No matter which world it was, time and space were always the highest level of power. Situations where storage-type artifacts were everywhere would never happen in the real world. According to the current production capacity of the Northern Frontier, at most 3 black cloth bags of this size were produced in a year. Each of them was an existence that could make Transcendent Realm cultivators fight for. The black cloth bag also contained a lot of spiritual items. Whether it was the effect or the age, they were all the best. This was something prepared after the launch of the Trade City plan. There were only 3 of them in total. They were originally intended to be given to some heavyweight great demons as a meeting gift to see if they could be pulled onto their chariot. He didn't expect it to be used here. When the demon ancestor saw Lin Yuan hand over a black cloth bag, he was slightly stunned at first, but he still accepted it. After scanning it with his mind, an uncontrollable joy appeared on his face as he said, "Dragon King, you are too polite. You are a distinguished guest of the Endless Sea. If you need anything, just say the word. Why are you being so polite?" That being said, the demon ancestor had no intention of returning the black pouch to Lin Yuan. In other words, it was fine to return those fays to Lin Yuan, but this black pouch was too fragrant. A storage-type artifact. This was something that not even the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had. As he watched the other party leave, the smile in Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly disappeared, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Honored guests of the Endless Sea? The meaning behind his words was very clear. Since he was a guest, he would have to leave sooner or later. He didn't welcome Lin Yuan to be involved in the power struggle of the Endless Sea, and it didn't matter what Lin Yuan left in the Endless Sea. Once he lost his value, he would definitely be chased out. Whether it was the gray-scaled flood dragon person or the trade city, they would all be divided up by the various sea demon clans. If it wasn't for his good temperament and the fact that his flood dragon face couldn't make many expressions, he would have almost lost his composure just now. Whether it was the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas or the other sea demon clans, they were all greedy in nature. An hour later, all the demon ancestors of the Endless Sea were gathered in the Willow Stone Fortress. Of course, compared to the recorded numbers, there were definitely fewer demon ancestors here. After all, many demon ancestors had been corrupted and deformed by the Great Old Ones. Although they hadn't completely degenerated into deformities, under the reflection of Lin Yuan's battle of ideals, they still had nowhere to hide. The demon ancestors who had been mixed in with the guards had already proved this point. They didn't want to give themselves away in front of Lin Yuan and be captured and killed. However, these missing demon ancestors had already been recorded by those who wanted to. Whether they appeared on the battlefield in the future or after the Great Old Ones were eliminated, they definitely wouldn't gain any benefits. After all, intelligent creatures had the same characteristic, which was that they hated traitors. They could kill each other and scheme against each other, but they still kept the last layer of cover. No matter what methods they used, they definitely had to make sure that under the circumstances of weakening the other clans, the ones who had the last laugh would still be the demon beasts of the Endless Sea. Lin Yuan slowly came to the huge conference room. He first recited the 24-word mantra. After confirming that there were no deformities present, he cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, "Whether it is cultivation or age, all of you far surpass me. However, regarding deformities, all of you seniors' understanding might not be as good as mine. Today's battle has indirectly confirmed some of my previous views. This is a serious matter, so I had no choice but to ask all of you seniors to take the time out of your busy schedules to come here. I am truly terrified." The group of demon ancestors didn't speak. They just stared at Lin Yuan in a daze, as if they wanted to know what Lin Yuan was planning. They didn't deny that Lin Yuan understood the Great Old Ones better than they did, but they would never admit this. Lin Yuan could see through the Great Old One's movements, but they couldn't. Didn't this make them look like idiots? Even the youngest person in the room has been eating for hundreds of years more than Lin Yuan. Who can afford to lose face like this? The leader of the deformities should be looking for an opportunity to start a decisive battle with us. However, all of you seniors, under your strict defense, they didn't see any opportunity. Lin Yuan's words made the old faces of all the demon ancestors present turn red. Strict defense? Wasn't it strict defense? They didn't think of starting a war with the deformities at all. If the deformities hadn't approached the Willow Stone region, they might not even have opened up a battlefield. However, although all of you seniors didn't take the initiative to attack and left the deformities a chance to survive, the deformities didn't seem to understand all of your good intentions. During this period of time, they have been looking for an opportunity. Now, they are even taking the initiative to create an opportunity to gradually weaken our high-end combat power. When the time is right, they will attack with all their might and break through the Willow Stone region's last line of defense. Lin Yuan curled up his body. The demon ancestors immediately looked over with scrutinizing gazes. After all, this wasn't a small matter. The slightest carelessness could lead to a complete loss. Even Lin Yuan couldn't make irresponsible remarks. Black Jiao, do you have any evidence for your words? A demon ancestor's eyes turned cold as he asked in a deep voice. No. Lin Yuan shook his head honestly. There was no joy or sorrow in his eyes. Without waiting for the demon ancestor to ask further, he said, "What I said is just speculation based on observation. What the deformities are going to do next is..." Chapter 854. Sow discord among the strong monsters in the Endless Sea. Don't just focus on the ancestral monster and monster king monsters. Even if they are cannon fodder, as long as there is a chance to sow discord, don't let it go. Leave this matter to Ziyi. In addition, try to tame those ancestral demons and demon kings that Qi Ming is holding captive as soon as possible. If they are too stubborn, think of a way to break through their psychological defenses and force them to confess some of their past grievances. See if we can find an opportunity to stir up the resentment that has been accumulating between the sea demons for a long time. If they are willing to cooperate, we can let them go. If they are unwilling, we can deal with them directly. Pay more attention to Wild Bone's side. Continue to send cannon fodder level aberrations to interfere with the monsters in the Endless Sea. Press them step by step, but don't let them be driven into a corner and directly send out troops to fight us to the death. If we fight a decisive battle now, our chances of winning are not high. Ancient Barbarian looked at the gathered Great Old Ones and said in a deep voice, "That's all I have to say for now. If I think of something later and want to change the plan, I will inform you." The position of the Great Old Ones was in a very awkward position. Perhaps there would be some ambitious people who would cooperate with them, but the two sides were destined to be unable to coexist. In the end, it was inevitable that they would meet with swords and spears. Therefore, from the beginning of this war, there was no peace talk. One side was destined to be completely destroyed. If it wasn't for the fact that the internal strife among the monsters in the Endless Sea was too great, if they joined forces with the Black Jiao, the current Great Old Ones wouldn't be able to resist, but their chances of winning would definitely be less than 30%. There was only one chance. Although the series of tricks were sneaky, it was an open and above-board scheme. Ancient Barbarian could guess that the Black Jiao would think of this, but even so, he didn't care at all. After all, the Black Flood Dragon was an outsider. He didn't know about the filthy relations between the various demon clans in the Endless Sea. Aside from the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, which had always been their public enemy, the other sea demon clans also had a lot of blood debts between them. Moreover, it was a hatred that had accumulated over countless years. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so disloyal in the face of a great enemy. If the Black Flood Dragon had the prestige to intimidate the entire Endless Sea and make all the Endless Sea monsters obediently listen to him, not giving them the slightest chance of winning, then Gu Yi could only say that he had done his best and that his loss in the end was justified. However, did the Black Jiao really have such prestige? Obviously not. It was just an outsider. To the big clans in the Endless Sea, it was just a passerby. Unless it left the Hengduan Mountains and joined the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, the dragon tribe of the Four Seas would not stand on its side. While Ancient Barbarian was issuing orders, Lin Yuan was also speaking frankly in a meeting attended by most of the monster ancestors of the Endless Sea. However, he keenly sensed that when he recited the Great Old One's plan, most of the ancestral monster ancestors' expressions became unnatural. Did Lin Yuan make sense? Yes. The Great Old One's threats and curses? Yes. However, it was obviously impossible for them to let go of their prejudices and hatred. Even for humans, who were far more civilized than the demonic beasts, once they accumulated such a level of hatred, the two parties would not rest until one of them was dead. There were even some extremists who, even if they couldn't survive, would drag the other side down with them. Not to mention the barbaric monsters. For a moment, the entire meeting hall was silent. After a while, a monster ancestor sitting in the front row slowly narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I agree with Blackwater Dragon King's point of view. This time, the Endless Sea is facing a catastrophe. If we're not careful, the entire Endless Sea will be destroyed. That's not all. After the Endless Sea is destroyed, the entire world will face the impact of the aberrations. I can't bear this sin." The monsters present were all at the peak of this world. In other words, all of them had the potential to become gods. For an incomplete world, to complete the 3 realms and 6 paths, various god systems must emerge. Through these gods, they must establish their divine kingdoms and evolve the 3 realms and 6 paths. Only then could it evolve into a complete world. Therefore, even if the monster ancestors present hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they knew about the existence of the world will and rule power. If they could stop a catastrophe, they would be bestowed with merits by the world will. It wouldn't be a problem for them to become gods on the spot. Even if they couldn't, they would be a big step ahead of those who only knew how to cultivate and accumulate god power. Immortality would be close at hand. But the reverse was also true. This catastrophe had already arrived in front of them. It was impossible for them to ignore it. If they couldn't stop it, or even help the evildoers, not only would they not receive any merits, they would also be burdened with sins. Those who had accumulated a large amount of god power might be able to withstand it, but ordinary monster ancestors would have to face the heavenly tribulation on the spot. It would be considered good if they died on the spot. They were afraid that their souls would scatter and their bodies would vanish. They wouldn't even have the chance to enter the cycle of reincarnation. This common sense couldn't be hidden because this was the scope of the world will's authority. As long as their cultivation reached a certain level, they would naturally receive a hint. Although the ancient creatures that fled here had passed down countless cultivation methods and cultivated cultivators to guard the gate of heaven, just by looking at the god sculpting sect in the past, it was clear that those ancient creatures were hiding something. Their cultivation had reached the ancestor monster realm and supremacy realm, but in fact, they had already reached the peak. If they wanted to take a step further and become a god, they had no way to do so. They could only feel the stones and cross the river, feeling their way bit by bit. So far, not a single one of them had succeeded. Otherwise, the white-robed man's avatar wouldn't have been able to slaughter so many ancestor monster realm cultivators, leaving them without any strength to fight back. This was not only directed at the god sculpting sect, but also at the cultivation sects of ancient times. It should be the doing of the ancient creatures. They didn't want this world to become complete, because a complete world could accept the arrival of a sage. Only an incomplete world could accommodate them, and they didn't need to worry about Hongjun and his sages personally coming to kill them. While the group of ancestor monster realm experts were having a fierce psychological struggle, Lin Yuan's mind had already flown to the sky, and he began to think about his own matters. This scene was within his expectations. He had only called this meeting because he had seen through the schemes of the old rulers. However, none of the monster beasts of the Endless Sea treated him as one of their own. With his prestige and strength, it was impossible for these monster beasts to restrain their own clansmen and let go of their prejudices. They needed to think, discuss, and consider how to deal with this matter themselves. Chapter 855. The demon court should still exist. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the 4 dragon gods of the Dragon God Temple. His eyes flickered with light. Although he did not know why the ancient demon court had been buried in the long river of time, he was certain that the ancient demon court definitely existed in a corner of this world. The strength of the ancestral dragons was indeed tyrannical, but in the era of the demon court, they were only peripheral members. After the Dragon Han tribulation, the most powerful dragon race among the 3 races had no choice but to give up the land and retreat to the 4 seas. How strong could the remaining members be? In his previous life, during the Tang dynasty, Wei Zheng had only slain the dragon in his dream for a moment. The dragon palace of the 4 seas had declined to such a state. They definitely did not have the capital to contend with the other races of the primordial world. Therefore, if there was really a calamity, there was an 80% chance that these ancestral dragons would be used as cannon fodder by the demon court. If the demon court was destroyed, it could only mean that the loser was actually the demon court. Then, these cannon fodder definitely had no chance of survival. Why would they stay in the endless sea and re-establish the dragon race of the 4 seas? Therefore, the demon court had most likely disbanded on its own. It was hard to say how strong the demon court was back then, but it was definitely enough to make the current guardian of the heavenly gate feel despair. To put it bluntly, these primordial creatures had hidden a trick when they passed down the techniques, but they would not be affected. Even these rising stars could climb to the peak of the world. How strong were those ancient primordial creatures? The primordial world, zenith heavens were everywhere, and Tai was inferior to dogs. Why didn't the members of the demon court become gods in this world? Were they afraid of mending the world, or did they not want to be bound by this world and wanted to counterattack the primordial world one day? The sky demon, the 6 empires, the guardian of the heavenly gate, the demon beasts of the endless sea, the old rulers, the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountains. Lin Yuan had never been afraid of these opponents that he could see with the naked eye. After all, he could see and touch them. They could compete with their methods. However, the demon court, which was as strong as it was back then, had not perished. Instead, it had gone from the light to the dark and had been lurking in this world. God knew how many of the major events that were recorded in history were fueled by the members of the demon court. What was even more fatal was that Lin Yuan did not know the attitude of the demon court. It could be said that everyone knew that he was using the tiger skin of the demon court. However, he could not deceive himself and the real demon court. He had spent this period of time peacefully. No member of the demon court stood out to expose him, nor did any member of the demon court contact him in private. No, that's not right. They came into contact with me. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed, and a name appeared in his mind, Kong Lezin. A supreme cultivator who seemed to be a guardian of the heavenly gates had a completely different attitude from the other guardians of the heavenly gates. Even when Lin Yuan wanted to kick a Dao integration cultivator off the dining table this time, most of the guardians of the heavenly gates harbored malice towards him. However, Kong Lezin brazenly made a move and wiped out those who were hiding in the dark and wanted to kill Guan Zhaoshan. This was simply going against the entire heavenly gates guardian. It would be fine if he was in the transcendent realm. But he was only a supreme being. His confidence came from the demon court. There was also the Ink Abyss. The beast Lord Kiran who ruled the Hengduan mountain range was most likely a member of the demon court. The cultivation of the desolate demon realm could conceal the secrets of the heavens and help Lin Yuan to block the system's ability to directly detect his inner thoughts. Such a method was not something a mere desolate demon realm could come up with. So what if the bloodline was noble? Back then, when the Kiran clan was powerful, wasn't it still suppressed by Hong Jun, Tian Dao, and other big shots? After sorting out his thoughts, Lin Yuan let out a long breath of turbid air, and his face looked much better. At least at this stage, the members of the demon court were still kind to him. Blackwater Dragon King, a call awakened Lin Yuan from his thoughts. When he raised his head, his gaze fell on the demon ancestor who was the first to respond to him. He heard the demon ancestor say, "The demon beasts of the endless sea are different from the demon beasts of the Hengduan mountain range. We have always been the ones to attack humans. Even the Supreme Being and Transcendent Realm cultivators would never dare to enter the Endless Sea to look for trouble with us. Therefore, the major clans are indeed not as united as the clans of the Hengduan mountain range. There are too many blood feuds between each other. It is absolutely impossible for us to completely let go of it. Seeing the other party's hesitant look, Lin Yuan just raised his eyelids and did not refute. He was too lazy to persuade him. We have already discussed it. However, we've already discussed this. Before the end of this war, no one is allowed to play any tricks. We must let go of our hatred and sever all cooperation with the aberrations. After the war is over, whoever seeks revenge is their own business. Before that, if anyone tries to cause trouble, we won't engage in meaningless internal strife. Those who start trouble will be expelled from the protection of Willow Stone Fortress. However, we still have to advance and retreat together. When the final battle comes, we must send troops to assist. In addition, we have to trouble Blackwater Dragon King to use that mysterious language to find all the aberrations hidden in the Willow Stone Fortress to ensure that we will not be schemed against by the aberrations. The expression on the demon ancestor's face was very serious, and his tone was very sincere. However, Lin Yuan gently shook his head and said in a low voice, "No, even if we find all the aberrations, it will not be safe. Today, a member of the Dragon God Temple attacked me. Because of the previous tests, I can be sure that he is not an aberration. Furthermore, before the meeting, I had already confirmed with a senior from the dragon race that he had not come into contact with any aberrations. In fact, he had not even come into contact with the beasts on the front lines. Thus, for the time being, I believe that there is an expert on the side of the aberrations who can turn into something invisible to the naked eye and provoke our inner demons." Before he finished speaking, Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed. Turning into something invisible and formless, provoking the inner demons of living beings, and turning them into a puppet of their desires? Wasn't this the method of the Sky Demon? After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Lin Yuan continued, "Thus, I suspect that the aberrations are not only facing us alone. They may have already contacted the Sky Demon from outside the Heaven's Gate through a method that we do not understand and received some help. If this is all they do, it may not be effective." Hiss. As he finished speaking, the cooling sauce was almost sucked dry. The Sky Demon had existed since ancient times, and it had always been a great calamity that the cultivators and beasts of the Tianwu world could not avoid. One aberration was enough to give them a headache. If the Sky Demon was added, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about the worst, if these two calamities were not dealt with properly, they could directly overturn the Tianwu world and fall on the Endless Sea at the same time. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive. Chapter 856. Fortunately, the Sky Demon doesn't even care about the southern territories of the Shenwu dynasty. He's focused on fighting the northern frontier, so it's impossible for him to send a large number of people to the Endless Sea to help the aberrations. Even if the Sky Demon really exists, it should only be a part of it, or maybe one or two of them. They won't be able to influence the entire battle. Although Lin Yuan was also uneasy, he knew that blindly speaking ill of the situation would only make the situation more complicated. He said in a low voice, "However, the appearance of the Sky Demon here isn't completely a bad thing for us. After all, dealing with this kind of thing has always been the Heavenly Gate Protector's specialty. What I mean is to ask the Heavenly Gate Protector to send a part of the practitioners into the Endless Sea to fight with us. Firstly, it's to reduce the threat of the Sky Demon. Secondly, with strong reinforcements, our chances of winning against the aberrations will be higher." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent again. For a moment, all kinds of distracting thoughts rose in the hearts of the Endless Sea monsters. Ask the Heavenly Gate Protector to come and help? Of course, they had no objections. But the problem was that this kind of thing wasn't up to them. The Heavenly Gate Protector's comprehensive strength was far above the monsters of the Endless Sea. If not for the terrain advantage of the Endless Sea monsters and the fact that they weren't pushovers, the humans would have no reason to let go of the Endless Sea, which occupied a larger area and had more abundant resources. However, the humans only occupied some of the surrounding islands of the Tianwu continent before stopping their expansion. Even most of the coastal areas along the rivers began to worship some aquatic monsters to pray for the safety of their ships. It couldn't be said that there was a blood feud between the two sides, but the difference between the races was there. The Heavenly Gate Protector couldn't wait for the monsters of the Endless Sea to be greatly injured or even unable to recover. How could they easily send people to help them? Even if they were willing, how could the deacons under them be willing? Looking at the practitioners of the entire Tianwu continent, if it wasn't for the fact that they were forced into a corner like the demon sect, who would be willing to enter the Endless Sea to make a living? Boom! Dong! Lin Yuan used the tip of his tail to knock on the stone platform in front of him, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He sneered and said, "Everyone, don't always look at things with a rigid mindset. Your concerns are indeed reasonable. No human practitioner is willing to enter the Endless Sea. Even the Heavenly Gate Guardian, who said that he would protect the world, has not appeared until now. It is obvious that he has an indifferent attitude. However, you seem to have forgotten why you are gathered here, right?" At this point, Lin Yuan smiled and continued, "That's because the aberrations are too terrifying. They've only been born for a short time, but they've already reached a stalemate with the entire Endless Sea. In that case, you should look a bit further. If we lose and the aberrations take over the entire Endless Sea, they can use it as a springboard to join forces with the Sky Demon to attack the entire Martial Heaven continent. What will the Heavenly Gate's guardians use to resist?" A bright light flashed in the eyes of an ancestral dragon that Lin Yuan had never seen before. He said excitedly, "So now, it's not about whether we need reinforcements or not. Instead, it's about whether the Heavenly Gate's guardians want to die with us or pinch their noses and send reinforcements to help us." "Yes, that's what I meant." Lin Yuan nodded slightly and confirmed the ancestral dragon's meaning. He changed the topic and said, "However, we still have to give them face. Humans are different from us. They pay attention to etiquette. Even if they're anxious, they can't rush over to help us. Thus, we still have to let the Dragon Palace take the lead and send a powerful demon king to the Martial Heaven continent to ask the Heavenly Gate's guardians to help us." The ancestral dragon's eyes flashed, and he seemed to hesitate. Regardless of whether it was a human or a demon beast, they had to give benefits when they asked for help. The greater the help and the higher the status of the other party, the more benefits they would have to offer. Although the dragon race of the Four Seas was wealthy, they were still a large race. They could only barely provide for themselves. In particular, in recent years, the other sea demon races had become increasingly disobedient to the rule of the dragon race of the Four Seas, and the resources they offered as tribute had decreased. He did not have the confidence to say that he could satisfy the appetites of the Heavenly Gate's guardians. "Senior, don't worry. We don't have to give them any benefits. We still have to make them do their best to help us." Lin Yuan said slowly, "You just have to choose someone with a wild and evil personality to send. You just have to give them face on the surface, but you don't have to give them any benefits in private. Just tell the Heavenly Gate's guardians that the deformed creatures have joined forces with the Sky Demon. If they want to continue to stay in the Martial Heaven continent and watch the tigers fight, we'll go all the way. Everyone will give up resistance and die with them." The vicious were afraid of the rash, and the rash were afraid of those who did not care about their lives. This was a hooligan's train of thought brought about by the explosion of information in his previous life. Lin Yuan did not care about the attitude of the Heavenly Gate's guardians at all. Those who were ambitious had already stepped out of the Heavenly Gate and headed to other worlds to pursue higher realms. The practitioners who remained in the Martial Heaven continent were not all mediocre, but they definitely made up the majority. He was now in the Endless Sea, and it was impossible for the Heavenly Gate's guardians not to guess that this was his intention. Thus, the Heavenly Gate's guardians did not dare to take the risk, although Lin Yuan had relied on the system and his own calculations to develop to this day. In the eyes of outsiders, Lin Yuan had always been dancing on the tip of a knife. No one doubted that Lin Yuan would not do something like flipping the table at the slightest disagreement. Furthermore, lowering himself to ask the other party for help was obviously not on the same level as threatening to perish together with the other party to force the other party to help. After all, any intelligent creature had a deep-rooted bad habit. Before it involved their own interests, it was fine to put on an act. However, if it involved their own interests, it was enough to make an existence that usually acted like a sheep reveal its wolf nature. Of course, although this method was highly efficient, it was just not likable. However, in a world where the strong preyed on the weak, it was useless no matter how likable it was. Once you had something that made others jealous, they would want to kill you and take your treasures for themselves. If the Heavenly Gate Guardians dared to do this, he would dare to do the same. In any case, he was not a saint who flaunted himself with benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Although he had borrowed the power of the system to cultivate, his true goal had never been to kill Hongjun or replace Hongjun. Instead, he wanted to return to his previous life and take revenge for the blood feud that had plagued him. Since no one was a good person, there was no need for them to deceive each other and laugh and chat. That was too much of a waste of time. It was better to directly flip the table and see who was faster. There was no need to play the sly fox of a mountain and talk about the tricks of a strange studio. Chapter 857. 3 days later. Tianwu continent, south of the Shenwu dynasty, Yangji sect. Preposterous, preposterous. These beasts are too much of a bully. A white-haired old man had his hands behind his back as he paced back and forth in his room. His face was so red that it seemed like blood was about to drip out. As the sect leader of a first-rate force, he didn't dare to say that his cultivation was unparalleled, but he was at least a Dao integration realm cultivator. Furthermore, he had the support of the Heavenly Gate Protector, which was an incomparably huge alliance. When he met the higher-ups of other sects, he could do whatever he wanted. As long as he went out, he would try to curry favor with them. However, today was an exception. A demonic beast that was hiding from humans had come knocking on their door. It had even F*King blocked the mountain gate of the Yangji sect. In an instant, it had broken through the sword formation formed by 7 Heaven Dipper realm disciples and severely injured a Kongming realm elder who had rushed over after hearing the news. This action was undoubtedly a resounding slap to the Yangji sect's face in front of countless people. After all, this was such a big matter, and the other party didn't try to hide it. It was like a mass of dark clouds floating out from the endless sea. It didn't try to hide it at all, and it was difficult not to attract attention. Sun Xingzi had been in charge of the Yangji sect for 170 years, and the number of people he had lost face added up to today's humiliation. However, he couldn't kill that arrogant demonic beast because its background wasn't small. It was the eldest son of the current Dragon King of the East Seas, and its status was equivalent to that of a crown prince of a human empire. If it was a crown prince of a human empire, he could kill him with a raise of his hand. However, the dragon race of the 4 seas wasn't an existence that the Yangji sect could easily provoke. Not to mention anything else, the dragon race of the 4 seas could easily slaughter the entire Yangji sect. Today, he killed a crown prince of the East Seas Dragon Palace. Tomorrow, the Dragon King of the East Seas would dare to use the power of his entire race to slaughter the Yangji sect. Although the dragon race of the 4 seas had their own rules, that was only an internal punishment for the dragon race. It was just an explanation to the outside world, and at the same time, it was to restrain the younger generation of the dragon race from acting recklessly. However, the dragon clan was also extremely protective of their own people. If a human cultivator dared to touch a single dragon scale of the dragon clan, it would be an irreconcilable hatred. Of course, this was because the dragon bloodline demonic beasts were indeed full of treasures. If they did not appear to be protective of their brethren and fight to the death with the cultivators who dared to harm the dragon clan, it was hard to say how many vicious people would go out to the sea to hunt the dragon bloodline demonic beasts. This was a blow that a race with an extremely low reproductive ability could not bear. It was precisely because of these rules that even if a dragon bloodline beast were to cause trouble, as long as it had the backing of the dragon clan of the 4 seas, the cultivators would only dare to capture it and inform the dragon clan of the 4 seas to come and take it away. After that, they would just demand an explanation from the dragon clan of the Four Seas. Father, there must be something fishy about this. A middle-aged man in luxurious purple robes pushed open the door to Sun Xingzi's room and said with a grave expression, I've looked through the records of the sect in recent years and sent a message to a disciple on a mission. After confirming it several times, I've confirmed that our Yangji sect hasn't done anything to offend the dragon clan of the Four Seas in the past 10 years. They've come knocking on our door, so I'm afraid they've come with ill intentions. Oh. Sun Xingzi's eyes flashed, and then he frowned slightly. His expression was somewhat ugly. It shouldn't be what he was thinking, right? The dragon clan of the Four Seas had their own rules. Even if he lost face today, it would be a matter of being laughed at. However, after the eldest son of the East Sea Dragon King returned to the Endless Sea, even if his cultivation wasn't destroyed, he would still be suppressed in the evil dragon pool for more than 300 years. If the East Sea Dragon Palace had come to seek revenge, it could be explained. However, the Yangji sect hadn't offended the dragon clan of the Four Seas in the past 10 years. How could they seek revenge? In addition, the change in the Endless Sea wasn't a secret among the Heavenly Gate Guardians. Recently, many Heavenly Gate Guardians had been running around to discuss countermeasures. They were studying how to deal with the dragon clan of the Four Seas if they couldn't withstand the attacks of the aberrations. The answer was no solution. Once the entire Endless Sea fell, the aberrations would no longer have a geographical advantage when they came ashore. However, the strange distorting power was still in existence that made all the practitioners' hair stand on end. Thus, if things really fell to that stage, their destruction was only a matter of time. However, if the Black Jiao was in the Endless Sea. In short, after much discussion, they finally came to a conclusion. The demonic beasts of the Endless Sea would soon come ashore and ask for help. However, the problem was that even though they had requested for help, according to the Black Flood Dragon's temperament and natural disposition, it was impossible for it to allow the Heavenly Gate's guardians to reap the benefits. This was probably a strenuous and unrewarding task. Under these circumstances, anyone who raised this matter at the Heavenly Gate's Guardians Alliance meeting would pass. However, there was no doubt that this was an extremely offensive matter. F***CK. Sun Xingzi thought. After hesitating for a long time, Sun Xingzi waved his hand in annoyance and said in a low voice, I won't see you. If you lose face, so be it. Go to the mountain gate and inform the disciples guarding the mountain to activate the mountain sealing array. Since we have already lost face, we might as well completely lose face. As long as the demonic beasts don't leave, we will seal the mountain and not see any outsiders. Ah, this? The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. It was obvious that he did not expect his father to have such an attitude. Although the art of formations was unorthodox, no one dared to deny the power of formations. However, the biggest problem was that it burned money. Not everyone was as generous as the person who had set up the array at the Cloud Crane Temple. He had connected the spirit vein of Mount Cloud Crane to the array and could open and close it at any time. Once the other factions activated the mountain sealing array, they were basically facing the disaster of being exterminated. Every breath would burn a large number of spirit stones. With the foundation of the Yangji sect, it was not that they could not afford it, but once the array was activated, it would burn at least half of the sect's spirit stone savings. That demonic beast was actually so powerful? The middle-aged man, who did not know the other party's intentions, could not help but be shocked. After the middle-aged man closed the door, bowed, and left, a cold smile appeared on Sun Xingzi's face. Only an idiot would help you with this task. Black Jiao, slowly try your luck and see when you can meet that idiot. At the same time, outside the Yangji sect's mountain gate. When the eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King saw that the Yangji sect had activated the mountain sealing array, he could not help but sneer. He waved his right hand lightly and ordered some sea demons behind him. He said in a low voice, the Blackwater Dragon King had already expected this. This group of humans is indeed treacherous. They would rather lose face than speak up for us. Fine, let's see who can outlast the other. Come, set up camp. This young master will fight to the death here. After a while, the mountain sealing array was activated. Not only did the demonic beast not retreat, but it also set up camp outside the mountain gate to rest. This news reached Sun Xingzi's ears. Chapter 858. Motherf *Ker, Sun Xingzi roared furiously. He put on a face as if he was on the verge of exploding. What the hell is wrong with that demonic beast? Is it really that shameless? Motherf *Ker, why? I've already admitted defeat. You hurt my disciples and blocked my mountain gate, but I didn't hold it against you. Instead, I admitted defeat and activated the Great Mountain Sealing Array. In that case, don't look for me for such a difficult task. Would you die if you changed to another sect? How long could the mountain sealing formation last? 8 to 10 years was definitely not a problem, but if he missed the task, he would not be able to bear the responsibility. The other sects that knew the inside story would probably only be happy on the side. They would not bring trouble to him. Then wouldn't he be crazy to burn money to make himself the scapegoat? Sun Xingzi took a few deep breaths as his chest heaved up and down. He waved his hand with an ugly expression and sighed. I still can't avoid a disaster that has come knocking on my door. Whatever, I'll go out and see this guy. In less than 3 breaths of time, the Yangji sect's mountain sealing formation closed again. Sun Xingzi did not lead the elders of the sect. Instead, he walked to the gate and smiled bitterly. Since you are determined to give this task to my Yangji sect, then I can only thank you for thinking highly of me. Once I pack up, I'll go with you. How about it? As a famous person in the southern cultivation world, Sun Xingzi was clearly not a kind person. Many cultivators were nearby. When the Yangji sect opened the mountain sealing formation, they thought Sun Xingzi was not in the sect or in seclusion. That was why they allowed the demonic beast to do as it pleased. A moment later, the mountain sealing formation was closed. When Sun Xingzi walked out of the mountain gate, there were even some busybodies who placed bets on how many moves the arrogant demonic beast could take. However, Sun Xingzi suddenly changed his attitude and acted as if he couldn't afford to offend this demonic beast. This immediately caught the attention of countless people. The eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King revealed his dragon form in the demonic cloud. His azure eyes glanced at Sun Xingzi as he said in a deep voice, "It's not that I think highly of you. I'm here on the orders of the Blackwater Dragon King and the dragon palaces of the 4 seas. As for why I'm doing this, use your brain. Don't tell me you still don't understand." As soon as he finished speaking, many people's expressions changed. These words were a little murderous. Sun Xingzi had already lowered his attitude. Yet, you're still spouting nonsense here. Aren't you a little ignorant? Bastard. Demonic beasts will always be demonic beasts, brainless things. Senior Sun Xingzi's expression has changed. I'm afraid he's about to attack. Open the bets, open the bets. Those who want to bet, quickly place your bets. You still dare to place bets? Return my spiritual stones and spiritual items. The surrounding noises didn't seem to reach Sun Xingzi's ears. Sun Xingzi frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, a hint of joy appeared in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Blackwater Dragon King, for your magnanimity." Some time ago, an unidentified Dao Integration Realm cultivator put up a bounty on Heaven's path. He wanted to buy the life of a black Jiao in the Endless Sea. Although no name was mentioned, everyone knew that this bounty was actually targeted at the black Jiao. Subsequently, many Dao Integration Realm cultivators took out a large number of resources to increase the price. The bounty reward was piled up to a rather attractive level. Sun Xingzi was naturally no exception. However, not long after, the Sovereign Realm and Transcendent Realm powerhouses among the Heavenly Gate Guardians seemed to have gone crazy. They dug out all the resources sent from the northern frontier. According to the previous gift list, they gathered 10 times the amount of spiritual items and sent them to the northern frontier. What happened behind the scenes was thought-provoking. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Black Jiao had already made his move. Even the Sovereign Realm and Transcendent Realm powerhouses didn't want to continue worsening their relationship with the Black Jiao. As for the Dao Integration Realm cultivators, other than the Yuxian sect, which had already formed a deadly feud with Lin Yuan, the other Dao Integration Realm cultivators were naturally anxious. They had always wanted to repair their relationship with Lin Yuan, but couldn't find a suitable opportunity. After all, Lin Yuan's main body was in the Endless Sea. They couldn't go there. As for Guan Zhaoshan, she had announced that she was going into seclusion some time ago. No one knew where she was now. The northern frontier was still at war. No matter how tough their heads were, they wouldn't dare to say that they could kill their way through the Sky Demon's territory alone, right? Now that the Black Jiao had asked him to do something, if he did it well, he could at least avoid a death calamity when he wanted to settle old scores, right? Go and pack up. There are still a few sects that need to go. Hurry up. The eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King waved his hand. He didn't seem to have any intention of talking to Sun Xingzi. When such a conversation was heard, the cultivators who didn't have the background of the Heavenly Gate Guardians were all puzzled. They couldn't figure out why Sun Xingzi's attitude towards this beast was like this. There's also the Blackwater Dragon King. Isn't that the Black Jiao from the northern frontier? They had heard of this name before. However, most of the time, they just treated it as a joke. Names like the Dragon King or the Wild Python were all used by busybodies to flatter. No one denied that the Black Jiao was powerful and had outstanding aptitude. However, in the end, wasn't it just a beast that hadn't even reached the desolate demon realm? The cultivators who had the background of the Heavenly Gate Guardians were the most excited. After all, if Sun Xingzi could think of something, they could naturally think of the key points as well. Today, they had indeed lost face by helping the Black Jiao. They had also offended some of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. However, they could avoid a certain death calamity. Who wouldn't want to do such a deal? How many other sects would they be included? The Heavenly Gate Guardians, who were originally laughing at the Yangji sect, couldn't laugh anymore. When they looked at the eldest son of the Eastern Sea Dragon King, their eyes were obviously filled with envy and expectation. They couldn't wait for the other party to come to their own sects next. It was just face. So what if they lost face? Compared to the lives of so many people in their sects, they wouldn't hesitate to kneel down and admit their mistakes even if Lin Yuan asked them to, let alone being slapped in the face. Ever since they knew that Lin Yuan's background did exist, and even the Supremes and Transcendent Realm cultivators had to be courteous to him, they regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. Some of them were timid, and they hadn't slept well for several days. However, no one noticed that while these people were shocked and discussing, some of the cultivators who were clamoring to be the banker quietly squeezed out of the crowd and frantically fled into the distance. What a joke! Were they supposed to return the good things that were in their hands? Very quickly, some people reacted. They shouted and pushed through the crowd, chasing after the fleeing cultivators. Chapter 859. It was different from the chaotic Tianwu continent. Lin Yuan, who was far away in the deep sea of the Endless Sea, was leisurely sleeping with his body crossed. The great old ones were still the same. They sent out aberrations to fight with the monsters in the Endless Sea. There was no sign of the decisive battle that Lin Yuan wanted. However, the ancestor demons had lived for such a long time. Naturally, they were not incompetent. They knew that the other party was deliberately lulling them. Occasionally, they would hear some noise and would only sneer. According to the decision of the meeting, they would restrain each other's clansmen. After all, if they violated the rules, they would be expelled from the protected area of the Willowstone Sea. Furthermore, they would have to participate in the decisive battle. They could not leave too far away and could only station themselves in the nearby sea. If they did not have the help of the other sea demon clans, what was the difference between running out alone and being killed? This kind of punishment would not cause them to fight among themselves. It could even be said that they would not be able to fight. After all, the ugly words were said first. Whoever caused trouble would be kicked out. This was something that everyone had agreed to. Once the guardians of the heavenly gate arrive, we will immediately prepare for the decisive battle. The chances of winning are, Lin Yuan tilted his head. A cold light flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. He sighed. As expected, it's not that simple. In the perception of the eye of God, an incomparably large number of aberrations were moving towards the Willow Stone Fortress under the cover of the night. The scale was larger than ever before. In addition, the sea demons patrolling the walls of the Willow Stone Fortress did not discover the enemy within a range of 30,000 meters. However, this could not escape the detection of Lin Yuan's eye of God. These guys are coming out in full force. Lin Yuan stood up and suddenly realized that behind these quietly moving troops, there were more than 10 tyrannical figures. They were like shepherds, driving the remaining aberrations towards the Willow Stone Fortress. Other than the Great Old Ones, Lin Yuan did not believe that there were other existences with such abilities. This was going to be fun. This was the first time that the Great Old Ones had personally appeared on the battlefield. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Lin Yuan roared at the top of his lungs. However, the night was very quiet. The Willow Stone courtyard where he lived was also very quiet. F***ck. Lin Yuan cursed inwardly. Although he had long guessed that the Great Old One would constantly provoke the inner demons of some sea demons, he couldn't do anything due to the rules. He could only let them continue to hibernate in the Willow Stone Fortress. However, he didn't expect the other party to act so quickly and decisively. Are these demonic beasts of the endless CF** king retarded? The other party had done something right under their noses, yet they hadn't noticed? Some time ago, someone had been drawing and writing outside his small courtyard. After asking around, he only said that he was drawing a defensive formation to strengthen the defenses. Lin Yuan had been cautious, but he didn't expect that he would still fall into the other party's trap. It was clear that some of the commanders in the Willow Stone Fortress had been taken advantage of by the inner demons and had fallen to the side of the Great Old Ones. Outside his small courtyard, someone had probably already set up a soundproof formation. It was probably not just that. Either this formation also had the ability to trap and illusion formations, or the other party had already prepared a large number of experts to kill him here. Other than Lin Yuan, those commanders and high-ranking people like the Ancestor Demon Realm and the Demon King Realm were probably treated similarly. The other party clearly didn't intend to give the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea any chance to organize a resistance. They wanted to use this opportunity to break through the defenses of the Willow Stone Fortress in one go and then use the human wave tactic to defeat them one by one. If it was just a formation, it shouldn't be a big problem. With the ability of the system, he could easily find a way out. However, if the other party had also set up a large number of sea demons to attack him, it wouldn't be a problem that could be solved in a short period of time. Although these Great Old Ones didn't have the ability to fight a decisive battle with the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea in a short period of time, they could only use this kind of unorthodox method to increase their chances of winning. After all, when the Heavenly Gate Guardians arrived at the Willow Stone Fortress, Lin Yuan would try to start a decisive battle and defeat these Great Old Ones in one go. He didn't expect the other party to react faster than him. Even if the demonic beasts of the Endless Sea were familiar with the route, they had only set off for 3 days. It was already good enough that they could reach the Tianwu continent, not to mention gathering enough strength to help here. Looking at this gap in the battle, even Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The other party's vision was extremely accurate and ruthless. After they took care of the defenders of the Willow Stone Fortress, they didn't need to rush to convert the sea demons at the back. They could just wait here and catch the Heavenly Gate Guardians off guard and further weaken the opponents they would face in the future. As expected. After the formation outside was activated, Lin Yuan was almost isolated from the outside world. Now that the aura of demonic beasts suddenly appeared, he didn't even need to think to know that this was one of the other party's arrangements. They wanted to see if these sea demons could kill him. If they couldn't, they would have achieved their goal by just stalling him. After carefully sensing the aura of the demonic beasts that suddenly appeared, Lin Yuan's suspended heart was slightly relieved. Fortunately, the strongest one was only around the 6th level of the demonic king realm. Most of them were in the desolate demonic realm or even the mountain lord realm. This didn't mean that Lin Yuan was confident that he could deal with these creatures that were attacking him. After all, demonic kings weren't easy to deal with. Lin Yuan reckoned that even if he risked his life, the other party would have to use all their means. When he was weak and powerless, the desolate demonic realm creatures could easily take his life. He heaved a sigh of relief because no ancestral demonic realm creatures had appeared in the battle that surrounded him. However, this didn't mean that the fellow who could provoke the inner demons of others and control them didn't control the ancestral demonic realm creatures. However, he was sure that there were many ancestral demonic realm creatures that were not under his control. The ancestral demonic realm creatures that had been taken advantage of by the inner demons had to deal with the normal ancestral demonic realm creatures. From another perspective, this was a manifestation of the lack of manpower. As long as one of them could charge out. As long as one of the ancestral demonic realm creatures broke through these unorthodox methods and killed their way out, they would be able to quickly form a defensive line and firmly block the deformed creatures outside the Willow Stone Fortress. Then, the people in the city could focus on dealing with the demonic beasts that had been taken advantage of by the inner demons. Black Jiao, you're just an outsider. You haven't even reached the demonic king realm. What right do you have to give us orders? The demonic king in the lead raised his claw and pointed it at Lin Yuan. He let out a furious roar like a wild beast. He was very much like a worker who was fed up with his superior being inferior to him in every aspect and still had to pick on him. So, this is your inner demons? Lin Yuan was still coiled up. However, he opened his bloody mouth and revealed a playful smile. Chapter 860. During the previous meeting, Lin Yuan did not tell the complete truth. The Great Old One's method of provoking the inner demons of living beings and then turning them into sharp blades was indeed very similar to the Sky Demon, but there was a fundamental difference between the two. The Sky Demon evoked the inner demons of living beings, causing them to constantly sink into their own desires and become numb. Then, he took the opportunity to occupy the other party's physical body, using this physical body to directly affect the material world. On the other hand, the Great Old Ones only used certain methods to evoke the inner demons of living beings, making them do things that they usually wanted to do but did not dare to do. For example, right now, a demon king had brought a group of monsters here. In essence, it was just that they could not stand Lin Yuan, an outsider, riding on their heads. In addition, the various sea demon clans were constantly in conflict. Because of the meeting that Lin Yuan had called earlier, all the sea demons were actually desperately suppressing themselves. Under such circumstances, it was countless times easier to provoke their inner demons than usual. However, the other party was in existence that could even affect the ancestor demon realm powerhouses. As long as Lin Yuan gave them a reminder, the demon kings below and the demonic beasts of lower realms were not challenging in the eyes of the other party. There was no difference in the difficulty level. What happened tonight was still within Lin Yuan's expectations. It was just that the other party had chosen the right time to strike and caught him off guard. But from another perspective, Lin Yuan's goal had been achieved. The battle of ideals could indeed suppress the distorting power of the Great Old Ones, but Lin Yuan knew very well that he was not the one who created the era. He was only relying on the experience of standing on the shoulders of a giant to bring the ideals of another world to this world. He just could not stand this deformed world. Even though he knew very well that this was a world where cultivators existed, ordinary people could only grit their teeth and silently endure no matter how dissatisfied they were. Even if another 1,000 years or 10,000 years passed, they would not be able to overturn the cultivator's ruling position. However, this world was obviously very vast, much more vast than the world Lin Yuan had been in his previous life. The production of all kinds of resources was also incomparably rich. The rich land could provide enough food, and the boundless land was enough for everyone to live on. What determined a person's status should be their own ability and contribution, not some laughable bloodline or cultivation. However, Lin Yuan was just a plagiarist after all. He was just used to the other world and didn't like the current world. It didn't mean that he was a living saint who saved people. Simply wanting to eliminate the great old ones through a battle of ideals was nothing more than a fool's dream. As the classics of his previous life were recited over and over again, this concept would become weaker and weaker until it completely lost its effect. It was impossible to maintain the suppression of the great old ones forever. Thus, the one who was anxious to start the final battle had always been Lin Yuan. Even if the mission was excluded, no one was more anxious than her. She did not use any confidentiality measures to send people to the Sky Marshal continent to ask for reinforcements. Her goal was not to wait for reinforcements, but to let the great old ones know that once the reinforcements were in place, the great old ones would not even have a 30% chance of winning. Thus, they would definitely come. This did not surprise Lin Yuan. Before the main course arrives, it's good to have an appetizer first. Lin Yuan opened her mouth and yawned, as if she did not put these demonic beasts in her eyes. At the same time, outside the Willow Stone Fort, the ancient barbarians expressionlessly looked at the tragic battlefield in front of them. Especially as time passed, the defensive line of the Willow Stone Fort became weaker and weaker. Countless deformed people were either hit by spells or arrows. They let out angry roars and fell down with their fangs bared and claws bared. Under the suppression of a flying restriction, these deformed people all fell to the ground without exception. Such a miserable death, if ordinary soldiers were to see it, they would definitely be afraid to fight. But to the mutants who didn't have much rationality left, this level of casualties was a joke. More mutants stepped on the meat paste formed by their seniors and continued to climb the walls of Willow Stone Fortress. Some of the smarter ones even built a human wall to help their comrades climb to higher places more easily. The morale of the deformed people did not collapse. But the morale of the Willow Stone Fort's defenders was about to collapse. With such a large number of deformed people attacking the Willow Stone Fort, even if they did not do anything, countless demonic beasts would be awakened. Furthermore, they had rung the alarm more than 20 times, but until now, not a single reinforcements had come out from the city. This situation meant that there were only two possibilities. Either there was some big trouble in the city, or the demonic beasts in the city were sleeping like dead pigs, not waking them up even after the alarm rang 20 times. The answer was obvious. After all, those ancestral monster realm big shots did not need to sleep at all. Even if they were on a mental journey, they would not choose to wake up at such a critical moment. One by one, the demon beasts were slaughtered by the mutants. The commander on duty looked around, gritted his teeth, and said, 10 minutes. Hold on for another 10 minutes. If there are no reinforcements, we will retreat. 10 minutes was not long, but to these defenders, it was a bit too long. Even the commander himself was not sure if he could live past 10 minutes. But it couldn't be helped. The Black WIRM's methods were so forceful that it simply caused all the demon beasts to be terrified. Practically every single one of these demon beasts that were responsible for guarding the city had a weakness in the Black WIRM's hands. Once they disobeyed the Black WIRM's orders or dared to have any bold thoughts, what awaited them would be pain and torture that was countless times more terrifying than death. The city could fall, but they could not be deserters. Even if they wanted to retreat, they had to wait until it was time to change shifts. This was the first order that the Black Jiao gave them that they could not disobey. Therefore, he could only hope that he could hold on for another 10 minutes, or that the problem in the city could be resolved within these 10 minutes. Then, the demonic beasts entangled with the unknown enemy in the city would be able to arrive as soon as possible. Why hasn't the city collapsed yet? Ancient E raised his eyebrows slightly. He saw that the commanders of the various defense zones did not choose to retreat in the face of the unstoppable demonic beasts. Instead, they gathered their remaining subordinates and attempted to retake the city walls that were gradually falling. He couldn't help but be startled. These demonic beasts, were they really not afraid of death? Or could it be that he had unknowingly fallen into the Black Jiao's trap? Was the other party simply inviting him into the trap? Ancient E, I have a very uneasy feeling. A great old ruler who was also in human form and looked like a skinny old man walked up to Ancient E and spoke with a grave expression. Chapter 861. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 4 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 137 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 2 desolate demon realm demonic beast. You have gained 89 attribute points. Ding. Congratulations, host. You have killed a level 7 mountain lord demonic beast. You have gained 50 attribute points. System notifications appeared one after another in his mind. Other than the attribute points gained from killing, there were also all sorts of sea demon materials stored in the warehouse. With the help of the system, Lin Yuan could quickly create a batch of powerful demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of various sea demons. Excluding the fact that their growth speed was too slow and they needed Lin Yuan's attribute points to nurture, in terms of bloodlines, they would not be inferior to the various demonic beasts that had the bloodlines of the dragon clan. In fact, they might even be superior. Was he one step closer to overthrowing the rule of the dragon clan of the 4 seas and dominating the endless sea? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's face became solemn, and he provocatively hooked the tip of his tail at the remaining sea monsters, and sneered, "To tell you the truth, I am the same as you. I am also a guy who is plagued by inner demons, so I know very well how deadly the existence of inner demons is. Since I am your inner demon, then there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. So when you appear here, the only way to survive is to kill me. Even if you run away now, I have ways to find you." Being taken advantage of by an inner demon and being possessed by the sky demon were two completely different concepts. Although those who were taken advantage of by inner demons would lose part of their rationality, they would only lose their fear and respect. They were still themselves. If it were the sky demon, no matter how many of their companions died, it would not affect them. However, Lin Yuan had decisively entered the blood-boiling state. In addition, he was not weak in the first place. He was determined not to fight the Sea Demon King head-on and focused on killing the weaker demonic beasts of the desolate demon realm. After killing another batch of demonic beasts, the ones that were still alive were obviously terrified. Lin Yuan was not unfamiliar with that expression and gaze. Because he was the same in his previous life. He could only look at his enemy with a hateful gaze. Over and over again, he had overdrawn everything and abandoned his bottom line, but he still couldn't take revenge. When he arrived in this world, with his current strength and achievements, he could easily crush his enemy in his previous life. However, he still couldn't return to the world of his previous life. This caused the inner demons in his heart to grow stronger day by day, and his temperament to become fiercer and fiercer day by day. He was already a typical example. Lin Yuan didn't want Countless himself to treat him as an inner demon in the future. It was too troublesome. It was better to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Lin Yuan had no intention of paying attention to the aberrations that were attacking Willowstone Fortress outside. After all, even the great old ones had arrived on the battlefield. No matter how arrogant he was, he did not think that he could face the ancestor demon realm beings head-on. No matter how much Joss flame power he had, it could not withstand such a burning, not to mention that he did not have much Joss flame power left. Thus, it would be better to hand those guys over to the endless sea. There was no need to put themselves in danger just to show off. What if the fortress was broken through? Then Lin Yuan would use facts to tell them that they were not the only ones who had been plotting in the dark. It was not just these guys who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons who had tampered with the Willowstone Fortress. I wonder how many experts in Willowstone Fortress have broken free from their entanglements, Lin Yuan muttered softly. Although he had various experiences and knowledge brought over from the information explosion era in his previous life, in addition to the almost masochistic training in his previous life, his shrewdness was not inferior to any ambitious and ruthless person. However, he had never dared to truly underestimate those old foxes who had lived for countless years. Naturally, it did not matter when everyone was smiling on the surface. However, when it came to life or the distribution of benefits, even he would not have thought of who would stab him first before the great old ones. The great old ones had seized the opportunity well, but to those old foxes, it was impossible for them to not think that the other party would fight to the death after the team had set off. They would take advantage of the fact that there was still some chance of victory to fight the monsters of the endless sea, rather than waiting for the guardians of the heavenly gate to arrive and wait for death. At most, they would be surprised that the other party had chosen to attack earlier, but they would not panic. As for the great old ones, would they be able to take care of everything? That would be a joke. To put it in a more mysterious way, those who had their inner demons stirred up mostly had weak Tao hearts or had flaws in their Tao hearts. And no matter what, it was impossible for such an existence to cultivate to the realm of a demon king or an ancestor demon. If it wasn't for a particularly strong sense of humiliation and obsession, even demon kings wouldn't be so easily provoked. As for ancestral demon realm bigwigs, even if a few ancestral demons were affected, there wouldn't be too many of them. It was impossible for them to hold back so many ancestral demons. It was just that they were all hiding in their own residences, unwilling to come out and take the lead. Let's see who can't hold back first. Lin Yuan muttered in his heart with a smile that was not a smile. Black Jiao, if you have the guts, fight me head-on. You're even worse than a human when it comes to dodging. A trash like you actually has the guts to call yourself the Blackwater Dragon King in the Tianwu continent. Aren't you afraid that the wind will be too big for your own good? The Demon King's attacks had been cleverly avoided by Lin Yuan through the observation of the Eye of God. At this moment, its eyes were red, and it was panting heavily like an angry bull. It stared fiercely at Lin Yuan. Quite smart. Lin Yuan turned his head to look at the Demon King, and a hint of ridicule appeared in his eyes. Although he had not fought with the Demon King head-on, nearly 80% of his attention was focused on it. Originally, he had planned to rely on inciting the Demon King's frenzied attacks to exhaust its demonic power and physical strength. He did not expect the Demon King to react so quickly. Not only did it not continue to waste his efforts, it even provoked him, hoping to force Lin Yuan to take the initiative to fight it. After a moment of silence, Lin Yuan said with a smile, "Correction, I did not dodge. I was fighting from the beginning to the end. As a Demon King, you brought your subordinates to find trouble with me. In the end, you couldn't even protect your subordinates and could only rage helplessly. What qualifications do you have to question my name as the Dragon King? This is a name that even the ancestor demons of the Endless Sea have to acknowledge. You're courting death." The Demon King's face changed. It could not be bothered to continue resting. It roared crazily and pounced at Lin Yuan. Its heart demon was obviously a kind of jealousy. It was obviously older than Lin Yuan, and its cultivation was higher than Lin Yuan. However, after Lin Yuan arrived on the battlefield, it became a pawn that could only listen to Lin Yuan's orders. It was the same as the Dragon Clan youth from before. They were all trash that was jealous of Lin Yuan. Chapter 862. A Demon King was chasing after him, but Lin Yuan was neither too fast nor too slow. His body was constantly twisting strangely. Even though his speed was not as fast as the Demon King, he was always able to avoid his opponent's attacks. He even reaped the lives of one or two demon beasts of the desolate demon realm and below. He was also constantly mocking the Demon King, lest it wake up and give up this meaningless war of attrition. The body movement of the roaming dragon's 9 transformations was so terrifying. It was definitely not something that ordinary martial arts techniques and footwork could compare to. Even though Lin Yuan was only at the beginner level, he was able to play with the Demon King, who was a realm higher than him, as if he was dancing on the tip of a knife. If this body movement was cultivated to the extreme, it was enough to be compared with the famous magical powers in the untainted world. Shrinking the ground into an inch, so close yet worlds apart. The reason why it was called a magical power and not a body movement was because once it was cultivated to the extreme, it no longer relied on the body to complete the movement. It was a kind of technique that could fold space and turn distance into distance. The body movement was only through various movements to adjust the movement of the muscles and force to increase the speed. However, this magical power already involved the highest space rules. Just a body movement was already so terrifying. Lin Yuan could not help but be more curious about the contents that were engraved in his blood but could not be cultivated with his current conditions. The roaming dragon's 9 transformations was not as simple as just 9 transformations. 9 was the limit of the number. It was derived from the number of 3s in the 6 lines. The cycle was endless. Black Jiao. Die for me. The Demon King's eyes became more and more red. Even the corners of his eyes were beginning to bleed. Lin Yuan even suspected that if this continued, he would be able to anger the Demon King to death. Boom! At this moment, there was a loud explosion. Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly turned cold. The city was breached? So fast? Because he was dealing with the Demon King, Lin Yuan had not been observing the situation outside. However, the defense of the Willow Stone Fortress could at least hold on for another 5 or 6 minutes. This period of time was enough for those old foxes to put aside their little calculations and take the initiative to stand up and face the enemy. However, how long had it been? How could the city be breached? One after another, powerful auras soared into the sky. One after another, monster ancestors and monster kings flew out from their mansions and madly rushed towards the source of the loud noise. Lin Yuan's expression also changed. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of some details and his eyes became playful. He turned his head to look at the flustered and exasperated Demon King behind him and sneered, "Whatever happens outside has nothing to do with us. Come, continue." Good words couldn't persuade a damned ghost. In the end, some people were too ambitious and completely ignored his warning. He had previously wondered why the great old ones could grasp the timing so accurately, and why those fellows who had been taken advantage of by the inner demons could draw formations all over the city under the pretext of building fortifications without revealing the slightest bit of news. The Demon King did not speak. He only panted and continued to chase after Lin Yuan. After all, Lin Yuan's cultivation was at the 8th level of the Desolate Demon Realm. In addition, after activating the Blood Boil state, the values on his interface had reached a rather terrifying level. Even if the Demon King wanted to catch up to him, he would have to use all his strength. At this moment, the Demon King could not be said to be an arrow at the end of its flight. At this moment, the Demon King had exhausted most of his physical strength and monster power. Naturally, he would not speak. If he had the strength, he might as well throw a few more punches. However, the surrounding desolate demons and river masters who came with him all changed their expressions. They all looked like they wanted to cry but had no tears. What was in this Black Jiao's head? Although they were not Lin Yuan's match, their cultivation was still there. It was not as if they could not see anything. For example, if Lin Yuan wanted to leave the battle, the Demon King would not be able to catch up to Lin Yuan even if it risked its life. Even if it chased for a while, it would be hard to say who would kill who. But the problem was that the aberrations had already broken through the city's defenses and triggered the defensive formation. If they did not provide support, after the aberrations poured into this fortress built by the joint efforts of various sea demon clans, all the originally built fortifications would be completely ineffective. The endless sea demon beasts did not have the slightest advantage against the aberrations on flat ground. In addition, they were being harassed by the inner demons, and there were also ambitious people with ulterior motives eyeing them covetously. If this battle was fought, even if the endless sea went all out, it would be very difficult to win, right? This Black Jiao did not quickly leave the battle and go to the front lines to suppress the aberrations. Why did he have to stay here and kill these small fries? Wasn't he crazy? At the same time, Ancient E and a group of old dominators had already arrived at the top of the city wall. Ancient E's feet were stepping on an incomplete corpse. It was the commander who had ordered them to hold on for another 10 minutes before retreating. Looking at the aberrations pouring into the Willow Stone Fortress like a tide, Ancient E's brows were tightly knitted together. His mind was rapidly calculating what was wrong with this trip. This place was very wrong. It was the clearest about Ziye's methods. Because Ziye was originally a figure of the same era as him. It was just that at that time, he was still a strategist, while Ziye was just an ambitious person who was good at bewitching people and collecting large amounts of cultivation resources for himself. The two could be said to be sworn enemies, but in every battle in that era, he would always be the final victor. It was not simply because his intelligence was higher than Ziye's, but because Ziye only had a few tricks up his sleeve. To others, it was a big trouble, but to Ancient E, it was nothing to be afraid of. Ancient E did not believe that Ziye's little tricks were so effective that they could suppress all the experts in the Willow Stone Fortress. But so far, they had not encountered any effective resistance. This was an indisputable fact. But the fact that it was so made Ancient E's heart uneasy. It was as if there was an invisible beast hiding in the undefended fortress, waiting for its prey to be delivered to its mouth. More importantly, Ancient E was not the only one who felt uneasy. The old dominator named Quang Gu was an existence that was older than it. He was once a commander of the border army. In countless battles with the barbarian tribe and demon beasts, he had honed his intuition and perception that were sharper than that of demon beasts. According to the clues in the history books, this honed intuition had saved Quang Gu no less than 20 times. Previously, Wild Bone had told Ancient E that his intuition was warning him not to step into the fortress, or else his fate would be very miserable. If it was only Ancient E alone, he could explain it away as overthinking. But what if Wild Bone's intuition was added to the mix? Chapter 863. What kind of trap did that Black Jiao set up? To be able to make a tiger general like Wild Bone have such an uneasy premonition when he had the upper hand? According to the original plan, as long as Ziyi incited the existence of the inner demon to hold back all the high-level combat power of the Endless Sea's side, they could quickly break through the defensive line of the Willow Stone Fortress. Then, they would gather their forces and charge into the city, killing those troublesome ancestral demon one by one, slowly tilting the battle in their favor. They could even decide the outcome of the battle and completely defeat the Endless Sea's Yao beasts. However, reality gave them a loud slap in the face. The defense line of the Willow Stone Fortress was not that easy to break through. Even if it was attacked by the aberrations and there were no reinforcements, the city guards on duty did not collapse as expected. Instead, they quickly adjusted their mentality and organized the defense line again. As they were not worried about the unforeseen events that would happen after a long time, these old dominators even personally took action and broke through a considerable portion of the defense line. Otherwise, it would have taken them at least 10 minutes to break through these city guards. In a sense, they had already lost. No matter which era it was, there was a rule to follow. High-level cultivators and high-level monsters had their own battlefields. Unless the low-level monsters provoked them, they could not take the initiative to attack. Previously, when the monsters of the Endless Sea gathered here, although there were many experts, when the monsters and aberrations fought, both sides had a tacit understanding not to send experts to kill the low-level monsters and aberrations. However, tonight, they took the initiative to break this rule. This also meant that the monsters in the Endless Sea didn't need to talk about rules anymore. They had more experts on their side. As long as they could hold back the great old ones, the other high-level monsters could directly kill the aberrations. In the blink of an eye, they could turn the aberrations into generals without an army. Therefore, there must be no deviation in the plan. They must successfully behead some of the ancestral demons that were held back and make up for the difference in combat power between the two sides. How dare you! Using your cultivation to kill my people, pay with your life. With a roar, the first ancestral demon rushed out from the shadows. Guyi's expression suddenly turned ugly. He turned his head to glare at the stunned Ziyi and swallowed the vulgarities that were at the tip of his tongue. Soon after, a second, a third, more and more ancestral monsters flew over. Some of the Yao kings didn't even bother to greet their opponents. They didn't care what realm their opponents were at. Instead, they unleashed all sorts of innate abilities and origin arts to slaughter the tide of mutants. At this moment, Gui no longer had the mood to blame Ziyi. After all, there was no point in investigating who was responsible after the incident. The urgent matter at hand was to think of a way to deal with the demon ancestors who weren't entangled, or even turn the tide of the battle and defeat the endless sea's demon beasts. Ancient Yi was silent for a while. He gritted his teeth and said, "I didn't expect the Black Jiao to be able to do this. However, since things have already come to this point, we can only take a gamble. Don't worry about the heavenly punishment anymore. Let's release our original strength and see how many demon beasts we can distort. Otherwise, we're all finished." No, just as Wild Bone opened his mouth and uttered a single word, almost all the great old overlords released their original strength. In an instant, a huge distortion force surged out like a tide. It was as if they wanted to turn the Willow Stone Fortress into a demon nest like the one they were stationed in before. The twisting power was so dense that it was almost corporeal. Like purple sea snakes, they wriggled their bodies towards the demonic beasts that were fighting. Even the ancestral demon, who had expected this, couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He looked at the twisting power with fear, not daring to take another step forward. Even with their level of cultivation, they might not be able to withstand such a dense distortion force. Even if they didn't become mutants on the spot, they would be trapped in the purple demonic domain and be squeezed dry bit by bit until their minds completely collapsed and they fell to the same level as the mutants. Too careless. Many ancestral monster ancestors cursed inwardly. Looking at the demon kings and desolate demons fighting with the mutants, their eyes were filled with pain. Even for a force as strong as the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas, the demon kings and desolate demons could be considered as the mainstay. Losing one of them would cause them to feel pain for a long time, let alone these demon kings and desolate demons that were gathered by the various sea demon clans. There was no saving them now. After all, when they came, no one cared about the Black Jiao. If the Black Jiao wasn't here to suppress the distortion force, they would be completely helpless. Moreover, with such a dense distortion force, even the Black Jiao might not be able to suppress it. The endless sea is finished. A demon ancestor lowered his head dejectedly. His eyes were filled with sorrow. Although the other demon ancestors didn't show it so obviously, their eyes were filled with fear and panic. Ah! One of the great old overlords suddenly screamed. The origin energy that was flowing out like a flood paused, and its distorted body rolled wildly on the ground. It was as if an invisible flame was burning its body and soul. After a few more breaths, this great old one completely stopped moving. Strangely, its body was turning into pitch-black charcoal bit by bit. It was swept away by the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. It turned into fine powder and drifted away. Was this King joke? Burned to death at the bottom of the sea? The group of demon ancestors looked at each other, as if they couldn't understand how the other party had died. Their gazes swept back and forth, becoming more and more confused, as if they were trying to find out who was behind the death of the great old one. I remember now, this is a heavenly tribulation. According to the ancient records of my clan, when a living being does something that heaven and earth can't tolerate, it will attract a heavenly tribulation. An ancestral dragon's vertical eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "These aberrations forcefully release the distortion force in an attempt to pollute us. This kind of behavior is seen as an unforgivable evil by the heavens. Therefore, a heavenly tribulation was sent to punish them." The existence of heavenly tribulation was never a secret. It was especially so for the Four Seas Dragon clan that inherited from the great desolate world. They didn't realize it before because this was an incomplete world. Not to mention immortality, it was extremely difficult to live for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, there weren't many cultivators or demon beasts that could attract a heavenly tribulation. This was also the first time they saw such a thing. Chapter 864. Let's release our demonic power and divine power as well. We don't expect to be able to block these distorted forces. As long as we can buy enough time, they will naturally be killed by the heavenly tribulation. The ancestral dragon shouted and took the lead to release his pure demonic energy and divine energy. He took the lead to collide with the twisting energy that was like a purple sea. In just an instant, his energy was greatly contaminated. It could even be said that in the blink of an eye, his decades of hard work had been destroyed. After all, he could only forcefully disperse the contaminated demonic energy. He did not have the courage to take it back into his body. The other ancestral monster ancestors did the same. In a life and death situation, none of them dared to be stingy with their strength. Ancient Yi's expression changed slightly as he gritted his teeth and cursed in his heart. The Black Jiao definitely had other tricks up his sleeves. It knew very well that as long as it released its power of origin to forcibly distort the sea monsters here, it would definitely attract a heavenly tribulation. Therefore, when they did similar things before, they either released their power of origin bit by bit to transform the sea into a distorted land, or they slowly distorted the sea monsters through mental pollution. They had never done anything like forcibly distorting the sea monsters. However, the heavenly tribulation shouldn't have come so quickly. At the same time that they released their power of origin, the heavenly tribulation had already arrived. Other than the guy who was burned to death by the fire tribulation, all of them were going through the tribulation. They were just barely able to withstand it and didn't lose their lives. However, as the fire tribulation grew stronger, more and more of them died. After passing the fire tribulation, there was still the water tribulation and the wind tribulation to face. According to the ancient records, after passing these three tribulations, one could become an immortal or a god and live forever. Looking at the entire Sky Martial continent, there were many cultivators with high cultivation levels who attracted the heavenly tribulation, but there was not a single one who could pass the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation was to go against the will of the heavens and to pursue immortality. It was a great evil to the heavens. They broke free from the river of time and descended into the world, vainly attempting to destroy the era. However, the heavenly tribulation wasn't something that would happen in time. It was just like the saying, good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be punished with evil. Even if someone did something intolerable and triggered the heavenly tribulation, there would still be a reaction process. They had only released the power of the origin and had not sowed any evil consequences, yet they had already started to undergo the heavenly tribulation. How could this be justified? It was as if the heavenly tribulations had been waiting here all along, and as soon as they made a move, they immediately suffered retribution. Saying that it was the Black Jiao's doing seemed to be a little flattering. After all, the power of the heavenly street was not something that could be used by ordinary people. No matter how deep the Black Jiao's calculations were, it was impossible for him to get the will of the world to deal with them. Otherwise, why would the Black Jiao cooperate with these monsters in the endless sea? He could have easily killed them with a wave of his hand and sent down the heavenly tribulation. However, the heavenly tribulation came so quickly that it definitely couldn't be described as a coincidence. Ancient Yi, what do we do now? Stop and run, or, at this moment, Ziye's eyeball-shaped body had already started to turn into a charred black color. It was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. He could not help but look anxiously at the most powerful think tank in their group, hoping to ask for a way to save his life. Let's do it. Ancient Barbarian's expression darkened, and he released even more of his origin energy. He coldly said, either the heavenly tribulation doesn't come, or if it does, it will be impossible to avoid it. You can only rely on your cultivation to endure it. Apart from that, there is no other way to survive. You motherf asterisk cur, Ziye's expression changed. The pain of being burned by the heavenly fire almost caused his mind to collapse. Before he could finish cursing, he forcefully swallowed it. Ancient Barbarian frowned with some dissatisfaction. He coldly said, if it wasn't for you making a mistake and causing so many demon ancestors to be here waiting for us to come, how would we end up like this? You still have the face to talk. At this point, he cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, since we're going to die anyway, even if we die, we can't let these demon beasts of the endless sea have it easy. Increase the power of the origin energy. Before we die, we have to get enough of them. Ruthlessness completely appeared on this former general's face. Every wise person's greatest pain was being dragged down by a useless teammate, causing a perfect plan to have to be modified by force. If things went wrong, not only would this modification not achieve the desired effect, it might even cause the person to lose his life. Ziyi was obviously that pig-like teammate. However, since things had come to this point, the demon beasts of the endless sea and the great old ones definitely could not coexist. Before they died, a few of them could be considered as avenging themselves. Under the threat of the heavenly tribulation, ancient barbarian had completely given up on living. But, Quangu, why are you still here? Ancient barbarian suddenly turned his head and thought of Quangu, who had not used his origin energy, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. This battle was completely lost. Among the great old ones, only Quangu had not used his origin energy. The rest were facing the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Death was only a matter of time. However, if there was still Quangu left, they would only die once. Their great cause could still be accomplished. After they died, they could still hide from the will of the world and obtain a chance to reincarnate. If they could awaken their innate wisdom and overcome the mystery of being in the womb, they could even return to this world without any hidden dangers. Ancient barbarian had no intention of blaming Quangu. After all, Quangu had already expressed his uneasy premonition before. When the demon beasts of the endless sea appeared to block them, Quangu spoke again and tried to stop them from releasing their origin energy to pollute the Willow Stone Fortress. However, ancient barbarian did not give Quangu a chance to finish his words. At this point, could ancient barbarian blame Quangu for speaking slowly? Quangu smiled bitterly and shook his head. His voice was mournful. All of you must die. As soon as his voice fell, countless milky white lights suddenly lit up in the dark Willow Stone Fortress. Then, a mixture of different voices slowly sounded. It was the scriptures that Lin Yuan had read during the Battle of Ideologies. However, this time, in the fortress, there were countless voices singing these scriptures. It was no longer Lin Yuan alone facing the entire group of great old ones. As the singing became louder and louder, under First Flood Dragon's lead, countless gray-scaled Flood Dragon people walked out of the white lights. Teleportation formation. I see. Ancient barbarian's eyes flashed with a touch of understanding. He smiled bitterly. So the most dangerous thing in the Willow Stone Fortress is not the demon ancestors, but the demon beasts who use Black Jiao's ideologies to fight against us. If we are caught off guard, we will be trapped and even completely destroyed. Chapter 865. The New Era and the Old Era, two completely different concepts collided with each other. In just a moment, the power of distortion that the ancestor demons could barely resist and still could not stop was shaken back a distance of 16 to 17 feet. It was almost directly under the feet of a group of great old ones. Fortunately, it did not directly hit back their power of origin. Whether it was Lin Yuan or the gray-scaled Flood Dragon person, they were not the true pioneers of the new era, but the true inheritors. In this kind of battle where realm did not count, even the newly born gray-scaled Flood Dragon person could contribute a part of their strength, suppressing the great old ones with an absolute advantage in numbers. Just like the old era was destined to be overthrown by the new era, this unstoppable power was almost unstoppable. The faces of Ancient E and the other great old ones became abnormally ugly. The heavenly tribulation was not a power that they could resist. They had fought with their backs against the wall, but they had only managed to exchange a group of Monster King Realm and Desolate Monster Realm monster beasts. This kind of battle situation was not even as good as a real battle. After all the scheming, the ones who lost the most miserably were the great old ones who had the upper hand and had the upper hand. Wild Bone, retreat. Ancient E roared with a ferocious expression. The only one who did not release the power of distortion, Wild Bone, was now the hope of the entire village. As long as they could overturn the new era, everything could be reversed. Even if their souls were scattered by the heavenly tribulation, Wild Bone could still cut off a part of the long river of time in the future and salvage them from a certain time period. After instilling memories into them, they could be considered as reborn. Even if the world's will was ruthless, it would not be ruthless to the fire seed of an era, because the world needed to evolve. Only a constantly changing world had the possibility of continuous evolution. Formation. Demon subduing formation, get ready. Don't let a single one escape. Wildbone smiled bitterly and did not speak, but a roar in the common language of the Tianwu continent came from the distance. Turning his head, he could see human cultivators dressed in different clothes frowning as they used their gang cheese to push away the surrounding seawater. At the same time, they took out all kinds of weapons, instruments, talismans, formation plates, and other things that they had brought with them, completely blocking off their escape route. Some people kept on muttering softly, but every time their lips opened and closed, it would make the distorting power in the surroundings fade a little. The corners of Wildbone's mouth twitched as he revealed a bitter smile. Actually, when we set foot on this fortress, my intuition told me that our path of survival was almost cut off. If we had forced our way out then, more than half of us would have been able to survive. But now, I'm the only one who still has the ability to fight. Do you think I'll be able to break out of here? Wildbone replied with a bitter smile. Seeing the human cultivators get into formation, the barbarians had a bitter smile on their faces and sighed softly. They had to face the three tribulations of fire, water, and wind, not the thunder tribulations that were created after the immortals established the heavenly court and the thunder department. Otherwise, if they rushed into the crowd with a thunder tribulation cloud above their heads, they could still cause effective damage and force those cultivators to disperse. However, the heavenly tribulations that came from the world's will test were all tribulations that were born from the inside out. In essence, it was not something that later cultivators could resist with a few treasures. Or, if one's physique was a little stronger, they could not even use treasures. If one did not meet any of the criteria to become an immortal, only death would await them. The only one who would be affected was the person undergoing the tribulation. Not to mention bringing lightning to crash into people, in their current state, even an ordinary person with a chopper would be able to send them on their way. Wildbone stood in place and thought for a moment. Then, his thin body slowly turned around and rushed towards the formation of the human cultivators. At the same time, his right hand, which was originally thin and wrinkled like tree bark, began to fill with blood as he rushed out. His skin began to stretch and his arm continued to grow. In the blink of an eye, his arm had become larger than his entire body. On top of that, his arm was covered with moving orange eyes that looked very evil. The situation had reached this point. The other great old ones had lost their fighting strength. Wildbone was being attacked by both the monsters of the Endless Sea and the Heavenly Gate Guardians. In addition, the gray-scaled flood dragon person was reciting the classics from Lin Yuan's previous life, so he could not use the power of distortion. Even if he had the fighting strength of an ancestor demon, he could only choose to wait for death or actively seek death. On the other hand, the mutated Wildbone was ferocious. He was almost single-handedly suppressing the Elysium Guardians who were in formation. Coupled with his terrifying intuition, he was always able to accurately avoid the area of influence of the talismans and formation plates. Even if he accidentally broke into the area, he would enter the area with the least threat because he had no choice. It would not take long for him to kill his way out. He single-handedly forced all the Heavenly Gate Guardians to retreat nearly 100 meters. He had used up countless talismans and magic treasures before he could barely kill this tyrannical great old one. It was very obvious that when it said that all the great old ones would break out of the encirclement together, at least half of them would be able to escape. From the combat power that it had displayed, half of them would be able to escape. Even if the goblin beasts of the Endless Sea and the Guardians of the Heavenly Gate attacked them together, if they wanted to escape and did not continue fighting, close to 80% of them would be able to escape. The ancestor demons who stayed in the Willow Stone Fortress were slightly stunned. They looked at the unlucky ones who were crushed by Wildbone and subconsciously shivered. If Wildbone had chosen to attack the Willow Stone Fortress instead of the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were in formation, they would have to pay 10 times the price of the Heavenly Gate Guardians. After all, although their fighting strength was not inferior to the Heavenly Gate Guardians, they did not have formation plates, talismans, or other supporting tools. In a situation where each of them had their own ulterior motives, they would not be able to fight to the death with Wildbone. Even if they fought, they might not necessarily win, and the demon kings and desolate demons would suffer even more casualties. As for why Wildbone charged towards the Heavenly Gate Guardians, who were more difficult to deal with, after all, after the Willow Stone Fortress, they would be at the rear of the monsters of the Endless Sea. Not only were there patrolling monsters everywhere, but there were also teleportation formations between the various sea regions. If Wildbone had entered the other sea regions like an iron fool, he would have died even faster. Instead, if he escaped back to the area that the Great Old Ones once occupied, he might have a chance of survival. Black Jiao, you win. After Wildbone died in battle, Ancient Barbarian sneered. His eyes rolled as if he was thinking about something. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.